Chapter 693. Meet the Plain-Dressed Woman. At this moment Zhou Xian finally understood why they had not encountered any accidents along the way. It wasn't that these people didn't want to make a move, but they were afraid. Afraid of the plain-dressed woman. And now they were asking to meet the plain-dressed woman. Obviously they wanted to find out more about her. Zhou Xian looked at the old man and smiled. My master is in a place far away. If you want to see her you can go find her. The white-robed old man fell silent. At this time Zhou Xian said, she killed the northern region king with a single sword strike. Hearing this, the white-robed old man's pupils shrank. At this time Zhou Xian said, moreover her real body didn't appear. The white-robed old man looked at Zhou Xian. Are you threatening the old man? Zhou Xian smiled. No, I'm just reminding you. With that he opened his palm and the prison pagoda appeared in his hand. The white-robed old man's gaze fell on the prison pagoda. Zhou Xian smiled. This pagoda is a fifth-dimensional treasure. Do you want it? The white-robed old man looked at Zhou Xian. Do you think your master is invincible? Zhou Xian grinned. Then go find her. However, a friendly reminder. My master has a bad temper. With that he walked into the distance. The white-robed old man suddenly said, Zhou Xian, this is the black-yellow great world. This old man will give you a piece of advice. It's best to keep a low profile. Zhou Xian stopped. You're welcome to target me. With that he quickly disappeared into the distance. In the field the white-robed old man's expression was ugly. His right hand was clenched tightly. But in the end he didn't dare to make a move. The plain-dressed woman. Now the entire Shenhuang Great World was investigating this woman. However, there was almost no information about this woman in the entire black-yellow Great World. To understand the plain-dressed woman they had to go through Zhou Xian. Before thoroughly understanding the plain-dressed woman, no one dared to make a move against Zhou Xian. At least not yet. A woman in a plain dress. Although this person had not appeared in the black-yellow Great World, the entire black-yellow Great World had heard of this person's legend. He had killed the king of the northern region with a single strike. However, the king of the northern region was no ordinary person. He was a top expert of the black-yellow Great World. Just how terrifyingly powerful was the other party to be able to kill the king of the northern region with a single strike? The white-robed old man remained silent for a very long time. In the end he turned around and left. Now they didn't dare to touch Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian arrived at the city lord's mansion of Tianjiang City. He had to admit that the city lord's mansion was much more impressive than the Temple of Order City. The entire king's mansion was nearly 1,000 feet tall and had 3 floors. In front of the king's mansion, there were 2 statues of demonic beasts that were dozens of feet long. Zhou Xian smiled and then walked into the prince's mansion. At the moment the prince's mansion was empty. Zhou Xian arrived at the main hall. He glanced at the surroundings and said, "Come out." Just as he finished speaking, a black shadow appeared not far in front of him. Zhou Xian's face was expressionless. From the Elysium? The black shadow replied, "Yes." Zhou Xian gazed at the black shadow before him. "Disappear from my sight." The black shadow replied, "Don't be angry, Divine Lord Yi. I'm here this time to resolve the enmity between us." "Resolve the enmity between us?" Zhou Xian smiled. "How do you intend to resolve it?" The black shadow replied, "We won't target you anymore, Divine Lord Yi." Zhou Xian suddenly asked, "What do I have to pay to make you kill someone?" The black shadow replied in a low voice, "I'm sorry but we won't accept your request." Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Zhou Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment onward Zhou Xian's position as the crown prince shall be removed, and Yi Lang shall succeed him. It was an old man in a black robe who spoke. A young man stood not too far behind the old man, and he had a faint smile on the corners of his mouth. It was none other than Yi Lang. The elders of the Yi estate stood on both sides. "Why?" At this moment, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling and she was Zhou Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Zhou Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yiling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yiling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Zhou Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked coldly at Yiling. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yiling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the clan and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince Yilang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 guards of the Yi estate rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yilang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yilang inherits the position of crown prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yiling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard quickly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yilang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. Subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I am willing to risk my life for you. Yilang nodded. Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood? Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Zhou Xian who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder squinted his eyes and his face was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yilang and was about to speak. At this moment, Zhou Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yiling did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yilang suddenly roared, Zhou Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly. Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, her tears flowed. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Zhou Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Zhou Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yilang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yilang. On both sides there were the Yi clan elders. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yiling and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yiling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yiling bowed to everyone in the hall as she asked timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked at Yiling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave." Yiling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yilang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yilang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yilang inherits the position of prince. What are you shouting about?" As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yiling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only covered her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yilang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince I'll need 10 guards. From now on you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince and I'll do anything for you." Yilang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe and the robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yilang and just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there and he charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yilang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Chapter 694. Sorry for the interruption. The spear-wielding man didn't hesitate to leave. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of the spear-wielding man. He glanced at the spear-wielding man. "How should I address you?" The spear-wielding man replied, "Dark North." Yi Xian asked, "Why have you come to challenge me?" The spear-wielding man looked at Yi Xian. "I'm from the northern region." "The northern region?" Yi Xian smiled. "You're here to avenge the king of the northern region?" Dark North shook his head. "I just want to fight you." Yi Xian looked at Dark North. "Take this." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. In front of Yi Xian, Dark North's eyes narrowed. He squatted down and the space beneath his feet caved in. In the next moment he held the spear in his right hand and thrust it forward. Rumble. Space was instantly torn apart wherever the spear passed. At this moment Yi Xian's fist arrived. Fist of Burial. The fist smashed down, and Dark North was instantly blasted over 1 kilometer back in front of Yi Xian. After he stopped, Dark North looked at his right hand. At this moment his entire right arm had been shattered. After a moment of silence, Dark North looked up at Yi Xian. "I can't beat you." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. But it didn't take long for him to stop. "Thank you for not starting a massacre in the northern region." Yi Xian smiled. "But if you had won, your people would have started a massacre in the chaotic universe, right?" Dark North fell silent for a moment and then he said, "Not everyone in the northern region is greedy. Of course it doesn't matter anymore. You're the lord of the northern region now, so please treat the northern region well." As soon as he finished speaking, he swiftly vanished into the distance. On the spot, Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before vanishing as well. 2 hours later, Yi Xian arrived at the Bound of Universe. The Bound of Universe wasn't very far from the northern region. As soon as Yi Xian stepped foot into the Bound of Universe, an old man suddenly appeared before him. The elder looked at Yi Xian. "What business do you have here?" Yi Xian cupped his fists. "Please inform them that Yi Xian is here to see the mysterious Yellow Lord." "Meet the Lord of Black Yellow." The elder looked at Yi Xian. "Why do you want to see the mysterious Yellow Lord?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "You can go ahead and report it." The old man fell silent for a moment before he turned around and left. About a quarter of an hour later, the old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian and said, "The Lord of Heaven and Earth requests your presence." Yi Xian nodded. "Please lead the way." Soon, under the guidance of the old man, Yi Xian arrived at the main city of the Xianhuang world, the Xianhuang city. The Xianhuang city was the #1 city in the Xianhuang world. The entire city spanned nearly 1,000 miles and floated in the air. Looking at the Xianhuang city in front of him, Yi Xian was shocked. The city was the biggest city he had ever seen. At that moment the elder suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, please." Yi Xian nodded. Soon he and the elder walked into the city. The city was very prosperous and there were many pedestrians. It was very lively. Soon the elder brought Yi Xian to the Xianhuang palace. The elder gestured for him to enter. Yi Xian walked into the main hall. The main hall was extremely luxurious. The floor was made of an unknown stone material. It was soft and very comfortable to step on. At the end of the hall in front of him sat a woman. She was about 26 or 27 years old and had a peerless appearance. She wore a purple robe and there was a red dot between her eyebrows. He just sat there. Weak. This was the first impression that the woman gave Yi Xian. This was because the woman's face looked abnormally pale. It was the kind of pale that was not normal. Yi Xian was a little surprised because he did not expect the mysterious Yellow Lord to be a woman. Moreover, the mysterious Yellow Lord's aura was extremely weak. It was so weak that it was like an ordinary person. Yi Xian did not think too much about it because he had already walked in front of the woman. Behind Yi Xian, the elder just looked at him. Yi Xian stopped and bowed slightly to the woman. Subordinate Yi Xian greets the mysterious Yellow Lord. Subordinate. Hearing this, the woman's eyes flashed with surprise. She looked at Yi Xian and said, "Young Master Yi, you may rise." Her voice was very thin and weak. The woman sized up Yi Xian and said softly, "Young Master Yi, why are you here this time?" Yi Xian bowed slightly. "I am a straightforward person, so I will not beat around the bush with the mysterious Yellow Lord. This time I came to get the mysterious Yellow Lord's approval." The woman chuckled. "Young Master Yi does not need my approval at all." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "I do." The woman looked at Yi Xian. You want it to be legitimate. Yi Xian nodded. The woman smiled without saying anything. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I am willing to honor you as the mysterious Yellow Lord. The woman looked straight at Yi Xian. After a long time she suddenly looked at the elder not far away. Announced to the mysterious Yellow Great World that from now on Yi Xian will be the King of the North. In addition, City Lord Yi will be conferred the title of King of the Kings. He will be the leader of all the kings. Hearing this, the expression of the elder not far away changed slightly. King of the Kings. In the mysterious Yellow Great World there were a total of 6 kings. No, excluding the King of the North who had fallen, there were only 4. And these 4 were like the former King of the North, belonging to the top-level powerhouses of the mysterious Yellow Great World. Now Yi Xian was the King of the Kings and his title was higher than the other 4. The elder did not think too much about it and turned to leave. Yi Xian was silent. He did not expect this woman to suddenly play such a trick. But this was normal. If you wanted something you had to pay the price. Soon the elder returned to the main hall. At this moment he was holding a golden seal in his hand. On the golden seal there was a lifelike little golden dragon. The elder handed the golden seal to Yi Xian and Yi Xian accepted it. At this moment the woman suddenly said, King Yi, from now on, the northern region is in your hands. Yi Xian glanced at the woman. This subordinate will manage the northern region well. Saying this he hesitated and then said, if the mysterious Yellow Great World needs anything, please let this subordinate know at any time. This subordinate will go through water and tread on fire. The woman nodded, thank you, King Yi. Yi Xian bowed slightly, if there is nothing else I will take my leave. At this moment the woman suddenly said, King Yi has just arrived in the northern region and is unfamiliar with the people and the place. I am afraid that many things will not be easy to deal with. Saying this she looked at the elder not far away. Send an order to the National Treasury to transfer 10 billion divine crystals to the northern region. 10 billion divine crystals. The elder nodded slightly then turned and left. Yi Xian glanced at the woman, farewell. After saying this he turned and left. Yi Xian watched Yi Xian leave and did not speak for a long time. At this moment, the elder who had left before appeared in front of the woman. The elder bowed slightly, Your Majesty. What is he trying to do? The woman said softly, Our King Yi wants to use the Emperor to order the feudal vassals. Saying this she shook her head and smiled. His ambition is not ordinary. The elder frowned slightly, Then why does Your Majesty want to do this? The woman said softly, He and I are using each other. After saying this she slowly closed her eyes. I want all his information. After leaving the mysterious Yellow Palace, Yi Xian looked up at the sky. All along he had been the passive party and now he did not want to be passive anymore. Since there would definitely be trouble he chose to take the initiative to face it. As if thinking of something Yi Xian opened his palm, and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in his hand. Looking at the World Prison Pagoda in his hand, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, I wonder how many people want you. After saying this he turned into a sword light and disappeared at the end of the horizon. At the end of the vast horizon, Yi Xian flew swiftly on his sword, raising his speed to the limit. About an hour later Yi Xian, who was in the clouds, suddenly stopped. He looked up and saw an old man standing in the depths of the clouds. The old man was looking down at him at this moment. Yi Xian smiled, turned into a sword light and disappeared not far away. After Yi Xian disappeared, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far away from the elder. The middle-aged man looked at the elder and smiled. I did not expect your Xian Yuan family to also have designs on that treasure. The elder was expressionless. Hasn't your Wu clan also coveted it for a long time? The middle-aged man smiled. Likewise. As he said this he looked in the direction Yi Xian had disappeared and said softly, What level do you think that woman has reached? The elder was silent for a long time then said, To be able to instantly kill the king of the northern region, she must be at least a half step into the unknown realm. The middle-aged man asked, Is it possible that she is in the unknown realm? The elder shook his head, Absolutely impossible. If she really was in the unknown realm there is no way we would not know. Moreover, people who have reached this realm have generally gone to that place to pry into the fifth dimension. There is no way they would stay in that place. At this point his expression became somewhat gloomy. There is no way that she has reached the unknown realm. P.S. When I go home today I have to work hard to write. Because I was singled out and criticized. I was even reported, saying that I didn't update enough and went to the healthcare center every day. That really got me into trouble. My illustrious reputation has been completely ruined. Chapter 695. The Unknown Realm. The Black Origin Great World was the most prosperous world in the four-dimensional universe. Since ancient times, the number of unknown realm experts in this place could be counted on one's fingers. Not only that, but the Black-Yellow Great World had not seen an unknown realm expert for nearly 10,000 years. At this moment, the middle-aged man suddenly said, "Whether this person is an unknown realm expert or not, it seems that he is not an ordinary person." The old man nodded. "My Xianyuan clan has used all our power to find out this woman's true identity. She has appeared very rarely, but every time she does, it is because of Zhou Xian." Zhou Xian. The middle-aged man frowned slightly. "I'm afraid this person is not an ordinary person. If that treasure was not so tempting, my Wu clan would not want to become enemies with him." The old man sneered. "Unless that woman has really reached the legendary unknown realm, my Xianyuan clan will not give up." The middle-aged man looked at the old man and said with a smile, "It seems that your Xianyuan clan is determined to get that treasure." The old man said calmly, "Isn't the Wu clan the same?" The middle-aged man shook his head. "If that woman has really reached the unknown realm, my Wu clan will naturally give up. Only unknown realm experts are qualified to possess this kind of treasure. If she has not reached the unknown realm, my Wu clan will naturally fight for it." The old man looked at the middle-aged man. "Temporarily join forces?" The middle-aged man smiled slightly. "That is exactly what I intend to do." Zhou Xian returned to Tianjiang City. Upon returning, Zhou Xian immediately began to break through to the Saint Realm. The news that Zhou Xian had been conferred a title by the Black-Yellow Great World quickly spread throughout the Black-Yellow Great World. A King of Kings. As soon as this title was announced, countless people immediately took pleasure in his misfortune. This was because in the Black-Yellow Great World, including the former king of the northern region, there were a total of 7 people who had been conferred the title of king. And these 7 people were the top experts of the Black-Yellow Great World. But now, not only had Zhou Xian been conferred the title of king of the northern region, but he had also been conferred the title of King of Kings. Was this not a slap in the face to the other 6? But what was surprising was that the other 6 kings did not have any reaction. It should be said that all the major forces in the Black-Yellow Great World had remained silent about Zhou Xian's entry into the northern region. None of the forces went to cause trouble for Zhou Xian. Within the royal palace, Zhou Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and began to devour Dao realm swords in a frenzy. As the swords were devoured, the aura emanating from Zhou Xian's body grew stronger and stronger. Not long after, he devoured another Dao realm level sword. Just like that, the speed at which Zhou Xian devoured the swords grew faster and faster. 5 days later, an extremely powerful aura suddenly erupted from Zhou Xian's body. Boom! This aura swept out in all directions, causing the surrounding space to crack. At this moment, Zhou Xian opened his eyes. In his eyes, 2 rays of sword light flickered like lightning, extremely dazzling. Who? Zhou Xian took a deep breath, and a surge of energy spread throughout his body. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Saint Realm. He had reached the Saint Realm, but he had devoured all his Dao realm swords. Now he did not even have a single Dao realm sword. Moreover, the effect of a sword at the Dao state level on him was almost negligible. Divine Realm. What he needed now were Divine Realm swords, and he only had 2 Divine Realm swords. As for the Executing Heaven sword and Soul Suppressing sword, they were both beyond the Divine Realm, but he could not devour them. Fortunately, he had obtained 2 Divine Realm swords from the king of the northern region. Of course, he was also quite worried because in the future he might need at least Divine Realm swords, and these swords could not be bought with money. In the shop, Zhou Xian was silent for a long time. Finally, he turned and walked out of the main hall. At the entrance of the main hall, Xian had been waiting for a long time. Xian bowed slightly to Zhou Xian. The northern region is vast and we have almost mastered it. However, some ancient families and sects have moved away. Zhou Xian nodded. It doesn't matter. Xian nodded slightly and said, "It has been a bit quiet recently." Zhou Xian smiled. "Isn't it good to be quiet?" Xian shook her head. I'm afraid they will make a big move. Most importantly, we don't know who our enemies are. Enemies? Yi Xian was silent. So far no one had attacked them, which meant that these forces might not be their enemies, but it was also possible that they were all their enemies. At this moment, a soldier suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The soldier bowed slightly to Yi Xian. Divine Lord, the King of the Southern Region's envoy requests to see His Majesty. King of the Southern Region. Yi Xian's lips curled up. Send him in. The soldier bowed respectfully and retreated. Not long after, a middle-aged man came over. The middle-aged man wore a white robe and held a folding fan in his hand. He had a graceful demeanor. The middle-aged man walked in front of Yi Xian and cupped his fists. This one is Li Munin, a small advisor of the King of the Southern Region. Greetings, King Yi. Yi Xian smiled and said, no need to be so polite. Li Munin flicked his finger and a storage ring fell in front of Yi Xian. On behalf of the Southern Territory and my king, I congratulate King Yi on taking over the Northern Territory. This is a small token of my king's appreciation. Please accept it. Yi Xian glanced at the storage ring. There were 5 billion divine crystals in it. Yi Xian put away the storage ring and smiled. Please tell the King of the Southern Region that I, Yi Xian, thank him. Li Munin smiled. King Yi, this King of the Northern Region has a close relationship with the Eastern Region. Please pay attention to the Eastern Region. Eastern Region. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He looked at Xianxia. The latter said solemnly, the King of the Northern Region's wife is the daughter of the King of the Eastern Region. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. At this time Li Munin said, King Yi, the forces in the black-yellow great world are complicated. Moreover, many forces are interested in the future. The treasures on King Ye's body are very tempting. Therefore please be careful. Yi Xian looked at Li Munin. Thank you for the reminder. Li Munin cupped his fists. This one still has something to do. I will take my leave first. Yi Xian looked at Xianxia. Send Mr. Li off for me. Xianxia nodded. After sending Li Munin off, Xianxia returned to Yi Xian's side. She said solemnly, is the Southern Region expressing goodwill? Yi Xian said in a low voice, for now, yes. Saying so, he shook his head and smiled. It's all thanks to her. The woman in the plain dress. Yi Xian knew that whether it was the Lord of the Black-Yellow Great World or the King of the Southern Region, they were expressing goodwill to him because of the woman in the plain dress. If the woman in the plain dress had not killed the King of the Northern Region that day, not to mention entering the Northern Region, it would have been a big problem for him to even reach the Northern Region. Because of the existence of the woman in the plain dress, many forces in the Black-Yellow Great World no longer chose to target him. At least not on the surface. After all, these forces were not stupid. Even in the Black-Yellow Great World, there were not many forces who could fight against a person who could kill the King of the Northern Region. At this time Xianxia, who was beside Yi Xian, suddenly said, what should we do now? Yi Xian was about to speak when a sword light suddenly appeared in the sky not far away. The next moment the sword light appeared directly in front of Yi Xian. The sword light dissipated, and an old man with a long sword on his back appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man looked at Yi Xian, waved his right hand, and a challenge token fell in front of Yi Xian. The Immortal Sword Sect has long heard of young Master Ye's unparalleled swordsmanship. I would like to invite young Master Yi to the Immortal Sword Sect for the sword-seeking meet. I wonder if young Master Yi dares to go? The Immortal Sword Sect. Yi Xian smiled and then looked at Xianxia. This is the enemy. Now make the Immortal Sword Sect our enemy. Xianxia glanced at the old man and nodded. Understood. Yi Xian looked at the swordsman old man and said with a smile, go to the Immortal Sword Sect for the sword-seeking meet. The old man said lightly, if you don't dare, you don't have to go. Yi Xian smiled and said, do you think I'll go just because you want me to? How embarrassing would that be? The swordsman old man was expressionless. Then you don't dare. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. A ray of sword light flashed in the field. The swordsman old man's face changed and he immediately drew his sword and slashed. His sword slashed down and the sword in his hand was instantly split into two. At the same time his arm holding the sword was directly sent flying. Blood spurted out like a fountain. The old man was horrified. He looked at Yi Xian. You. At this moment, a ray of sword light suddenly flew through his throat. The old man's head directly flew. Yi Xian glanced at the old man's head. Pass down the order. From this moment on, the Northern Territory declares war on the Immortal Sword Sect. Shangguan Xian. End of this chapter. Chapter 696. The Northern region had declared war on the Immortal Sword Sect. The Northern region's sudden declaration of war shocked numerous powers in the Xianhuang Great World. No one expected Yi Xian to suddenly declare war on the Immortal Sword Sect. One had to know that the Immortal Sword Sect wasn't an ordinary power. It had huge influence and power in the Xianhuang Great World. Yi Xian had declared war without saying a word. What was he trying to do? Dominate the Xianhuang Great World? Immortal Sword Sect. The Immortal Sword Sect was located in the south of the Xianhuang Great World. They had their own independent world, the Sword World. In the Xianhuang Great World, the Immortal Sword Sect could be said to be the #1 swordsman sect. Since ancient times, all the famous swordsmen in the Xianhuang Great World came from the Immortal Sword Sect. Tens of thousands of years ago, the Immortal Sword Sect was the #1 power in the Xianhuang Great World. That was because at that time the Immortal Sword Sect had an unknown realm expert, Sword Emperor Tingyun. Within the ceiling pavilion, there was a statue of Sword Emperor Tingyun. Although the Immortal Sword Sect wasn't as strong as before, it still had its foundations. Immortal Sword Hall. There were only 3 people in the hall. One was a middle-aged man in a green robe. His face was like jade, his long hair draped over his shoulders, and he had a faint smile on his face. On his right hand, a sword light circled around his fingers. This person was the Immortal Sword Sect's sect leader, Jian Shifeng. In the Xianhuang Great World, apart from the Xianhuang God Martial List, there was another list, the Supreme List. The people on this list were the top-end realm experts in the entire Xianhuang Great World. The king of the northern region was also on the Supreme List, and he was ranked 7th. As for Jian Shifeng, he was ranked 5th. Not far from the middle-aged man stood an old man. The old man wore a loose black robe and his hands were hidden in his sleeves. On his back was a huge black iron sword. On the right of the old man stood a teen. The teen was around 20 years old and he wore a white robe hugging his sword. This young man was Yu Jinzhao, who was ranked 6th on the Xianhuang Divine Martial List. Jian Shifeng suddenly laughed. I never expected that young Yi Xian would actually directly declare war on my Immortal Sword Sect. At this point he looked at Yu Jinzhao. Jinzhao, what do you think? Yu Jinzhao pondered for a moment and said, there are 2 reasons why this person declared war on our Immortal Sword Sect. Firstly, the person behind this person is extremely powerful and can attack at any time. Secondly, this person is playing a psychological game with us. Jian Shifeng smiled and said, tell me about it. There is no need to doubt the strength of the person behind him, but it is extremely likely that the other party will not be able to make a move at any time. It is precisely because of this that Yi Xian is so arrogant, because the more arrogant he is, the more afraid we will be. As long as we are afraid, he will be able to gain the advantage. Moreover, it is not only our Immortal Sword Sect. His arrogance and fearlessness will also cause other forces to be afraid. At this point he paused for a moment and continued, just like in the secular world, the wealthier the person is, the more low-key they are. On the contrary, those who are poor or have a little bit of money will instead show off. This Yi Xian might be pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Jian Shifeng looked at Yu Jinzhao. Why do you think that the person behind him will not be able to make a move? Yu Jinzhao said softly, that person has appeared twice. The first time she killed the Northern Region Marshal and the second time she killed the Northern Region King. Both times she appeared as a clone and did not appear in person. Not only that, but as far as I know, the reason why she appeared is because the Northern Region used some methods to find her. According to my guess, that Yi Xian might not be able to contact the plain-dressed woman. Jian Shifeng asked, why do you think so? Yu Jinzhao said, it is just a guess. Jian Shifeng fell silent. At this time Yu Jinzhao suddenly said, Sect Master, I have something to say. Jian Shifeng nodded his head. Speak. Yu Jinzhao said, there is no need for our Celestial Sword Sect to be enemies with him. Firstly, the plain-dressed woman behind him is at least above end realm. If such an expert goes crazy to take revenge on our Celestial Sword Sect, our Celestial Sword Sect will suffer heavy losses. We might even lose our current position in Xianhuang Great World. Moreover, even if Sect Master obtains Yi Xian's treasure, our Celestial Sword Sect will become the target of everyone. Jian Shifeng laughed. How would I not know what you are saying? Even if our celestial sword sect obtains that treasure in the end, it will only benefit others. But when he said this, he didn't continue. A moment later, Jian Shifeng suddenly said, Elder Nanshan, Eugene Zhao, the two of you can leave first. Eugene Zhao and the old man bowed before turning around and leaving. After Eugene Zhao and the old man left, a woman suddenly appeared in the hall. She was roughly 20 years old and wore a white dress. On her white dress was an embroidered black wolf. The black wolf was lying down and looking forward. It was extremely fierce, like it wanted to swallow someone. Beautiful. The woman's beauty couldn't be described with words. Be it her face or figure, they were perfect without a single flaw. Jian Shifeng looked at the woman. She smiled and pointed with her finger. A white jade bottle appeared in front of Jian Shifeng. Jian Shifeng swept the jade bottle and a fiery gaze flashed in his eyes. Very quickly, his expression changed and he looked at the woman. Lady Qi, why is there only half a ascension pill? The woman smiled. Once this matter is settled, the other half will appear in your hands. Jian Shifeng looked at the woman. Lady Qi, who is the woman behind Yi Xian? The woman shook her head and smiled. That has nothing to do with you. Jian Shifeng kept silent for a long while before returning the jade bottle to the woman. Lady Qi, our celestial sword sect withdraws. The woman looked at Jian Shifeng and didn't say a word. Jian Shifeng smiled. I do want to break through. However, if the entire celestial sword sect is the price, then I would rather not do it. The woman smiled. There aren't more than 10 ascension pills in Xianhuang Great World. Without it, even if the sword sect leader is a genius, he wouldn't be able to break through to End Realm. Jian Shifeng kept silent. The woman said, Sword sect leader should understand the difference between End Realm and Ascension Realm. Ascension Realm. Jian Shifeng shook his head. The price is too huge. My celestial sword sect can't deal with the person behind Yi Xian. The woman smiled. Price? Sword sect leader, have you thought about how many celestial sword sect leaders you can create if you reach Ascension Realm? Moreover, we will deal with the person behind Yi Xian, so what are you afraid of? Jian Shifeng kept silent for a moment before he looked at the woman. The outcome of the Northern Region King. The woman shook her head. It isn't that we don't care about him, but he went to find that woman, which led to his own death. If not, even 10 Yi Xian wouldn't be able to do anything to him. As she said that, she looked at Jian Shifeng. Sword sect leader, this might be your only chance to reach Ascension Realm. Of course, if you aren't willing, then we won't force you. Jian Shifeng looked at the woman. Miss Qi, why don't you find him yourself? Miss Qi smiled. Our target is the person behind him. Jian Shifeng said solemnly. With your strength, you can kill Yi Xian with lightning speed. As he said that, he seemed to have thought of something and looked at Jian Shifeng. You are afraid of her. Miss Qi smiled and didn't say anything. Jian Shifeng said solemnly. Miss Qi, what level has that woman reached? Has she really reached Unknown Realm? Miss Qi shook her head. Based on the current situation, she is at least above Ascension Realm. Jian Shifeng was silent for a moment, then asked, Why not unknown? Miss Qi smiled. If she is an unknown realm, she could destroy the entire Xianhuan Great World with a single sword strike, but she didn't do so. Why? Naturally, she is afraid of some existence in Xianhuan Great World. Moreover, if an unknown realm expert appeared in the fourth dimension, there is no way we wouldn't know, and neither would those old men. Since she isn't in unknown realm, why should we be afraid of her? Jian Shifeng looked at the woman. Miss Qi, I have always been curious, what is the use of that treasure? Miss Qi smiled. You can use it to enter the fifth dimension. Enter the fifth dimension. Jian Shifeng said softly, as expected. In fact, he had already guessed that if it weren't for this temptation, these people wouldn't be willing to provoke an expert like that woman. The temptation of entering the fifth dimension was too great, especially for those who had reached a bottleneck. These people might have reached the end of the fourth dimension, and if they wanted to go further, they could only enter the fifth dimension. Simply put, the fifth dimension was their hope. Miss Qi suddenly said, Have you thought it through, Sword Sect Master? Jian Shifeng looked at Miss Qi. I need a complete ascension pill. Miss Qi looked at Jian Shifeng. All right. With that, she flicked a finger and a white jade bottle landed in front of Jian Shifeng. Jian Shifeng put away the white jade bottle, then looked to the right. Pass down my order, declare war on the Northern Territory. Miss Qi smiled, then turned and left. The Immortal Sword Sect declared war on the Northern Territory. As soon as the news spread, the entire Xuanhuan Great World was in an uproar. Yi Xian had just taken over the northern territory, and could be said to be a rising force, while the Immortal Sword Sect was a local force of the Xuanhuan Great World. Now that these two forces had publicly declared war on each other, it meant that the Xuanhuan Great World would no longer be peaceful. The other forces of the Xuanhuan Great World were very happy because finally someone had taken the lead to deal with Yi Xian. After the king of the northern territory was destroyed, there were naturally many forces who coveted the northern territory, but because Yi Xian had taken over the northern territory, these people had no choice but to give up on this fat piece of meat. But for an outsider like Yi Xian, these local forces of the Xuanhuan Great World did not approve of him, nor would they approve of him, but they did not dare to provoke him. After all, Yi Xian had destroyed the northern territory, and had even recruited the northern territory's army. And now, the Immortal Sword Sect had begun to make a move against Yi Xian. The strength of Yi Xian and the people behind him would soon be revealed. Northern Territory, Tianjiang City. On this day, an old man suddenly appeared outside Tianjiang City, carrying a large sword on his back. The old man looked at the city gate, and in the next moment he suddenly pulled out the large sword on his back and slashed forward. Boom! A wave of sword chi swept into the distance like a flood, and in an instant the city gate exploded. The sword chi did not stop there, and it swept into the city with a powerful force, heading straight for where Yi Xian was. P.S. This time I met some authors and found that some of them can write more than 8,000 words in an hour. They can really write tens of thousands of words in an hour. I feel a little ashamed. Work hard. Chapter 697. Yi Xian, who sat cross-legged in the hall, suddenly opened his eyes, and then he vanished in the next moment. Outside the hall, Yi Xian gazed at the sword energy that had arrived in front of him with an emotionless expression on his face. When the sword energy was around 3 m away from him, he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. The sword energy was instantly slashed into pieces. Meanwhile, a large sword suddenly slashed down forcefully towards his head. When the sword slashed down, the space around Yi Xian instantly cracked into a spider web shape. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then the space around him instantly returned to normal. In the next moment, countless strands of the energy of the earth suddenly converged into his body, and then Yi Xian drew his sword and flicked it upwards. It was a head-on collision. His current physical body was at the god rank realm, and coupled with the energy of the earth, he wasn't inferior to anyone in a head-on collision. As soon as their swords collided, bang! A thunderous explosion reverberated through the air. On the other hand, the owners of both swords retreated madly. Yi Xian stopped after moving 30 m back. At practically the exact same moment, the old man stopped as well. The old man gazed at Yi Xian with a calm gaze, and he held his sword tightly in his right hand. Yi Xian didn't speak as well. Countless strands of the energy of the earth converged incessantly towards him. A moment of silence ensued. Both of them vanished on the spot at practically the exact same moment. 2 rays of light flashed. After Yi Xian arrived in front of the old man, he slashed down with his sword. However, the old man's figure suddenly became ethereal. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's sword suddenly stopped moving, and then he swiftly swept it behind him. Meanwhile, a sword arrived before him. Bang! As soon as the two swords collided, an expanse of light erupted. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly vanished once more. Yi Xian immediately took a step back. At practically the exact same moment, a sword brushed past the center of his forehead. Yi Xian twisted his right wrist, and then the sword in his hand moved at a strange angle that brushed past his stomach as it stabbed towards the old man. At this moment, the old man had already retreated 100 feet. Before the old man landed on the ground, a ray of sword light suddenly appeared about an inch away from Yi Xian's forehead. However, this ray of sword light could not advance any further because Yi Xian's sword had already pressed against this ray of sword light. In the distance, the old man suddenly gripped his greatsword with both hands. With a stomp of his right foot, he leaped directly above Yi Xian's head. In the next moment, he gripped his greatsword with both hands and slashed downwards. This sword could split mountains. This time, however, Yi Xian did not forcefully receive the attack. The moment the old man disappeared, he had already retreated several feet. The old man's sword missed, but the sword momentum contained in his sword still forced Yi Xian to retreat more than 100 feet. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, he gently pointed with his right hand. Buzz! A sword howl suddenly resounded, and then numerous flying swords slashed down like a storm towards the old man. The old man wielded his sword and slashed repeatedly. Bang! 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 Numerous explosions resounded incessantly while the old man retreated repeatedly, and it didn't take long for him to be over 300 m away. Suddenly the old man stomped his right foot on the ground, and then he swept his sword horizontally. Crescent moon. As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of sword light that was like a crescent moon surged out from his blade. Bang! Yi Xian's flying swords were instantly blasted into pieces. Yi Xian stood on the spot with his sword pointed diagonally towards the ground. It wasn't the executing heaven sword, it was just an ordinary Dao realm sword. The experts of the Divine Kingdom had converged over since a long time ago. However, they didn't attack because Yi Xian had asked them not to. This was a battle between Yi Xian and the old man. The Yi clan's ancestral shrine. Ancestors, Yi Xian is lacking in talent and virtue. From this moment onward, Yi Xian is removed from the position of prince and will be succeeded by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral shrine. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral shrine and asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and entered the ancestral shrine. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting with his life on the line for the clan, and we do not know if he is dead or alive. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he discards his position or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog her 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he is fighting with his life on the line for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you shouting about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. The right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Do you understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to see something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Boo! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out, "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he discards his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position and it's everyone's wish. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe and the robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Zhou Xian who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yilang and just as he was about to speak, Zhou Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yiling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yilang suddenly roared, "Zhou Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly. Zhou Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Chapter 698. Healing. Jiangjiu had been in contact with Zhou Xian for the longest time, so it could be said that she understood Zhou Xian's character and temper very well. Zhou Xian's reverse scale was Yiling. This little sister who he had raised from a young age, was his biggest reverse scale. Whoever touched her would die. When Zhou Xian was normal, his thoughts were normal, but if something happened to Yiling, he would become abnormal. He would become a complete lunatic. Even she was afraid of Zhou Xian in that state, because he would lose his rationality. Opposite Jiangjiu, Miss Qi smiled. "It's because he cares so much about his little sister that I came." Jiangjiu looked at Miss Qi and made a prompt decision. "Take Yiling away." Shangguan turned and left. In front of them, a shadow guard directly rushed towards Miss Qi, but the moment he rushed out, a powerful force directly enveloped him. In the next moment, the shadow guard disappeared without a trace, as if he had never been there. Seeing this scene, Jiangjiu's expression changed. The other shadow guards were about to act, but Jiangjiu suddenly shouted angrily, "All of you stop." The shadow guards stopped. Miss Qi looked at Jiangjiu and smiled, "You're very smart. Don't let them make unnecessary sacrifices." As her voice fell, she disappeared, and when she reappeared, she was already in front of a large hall. Miss Qi pushed open the door of the hall, and a little girl was sitting not far from the door. This girl was Yiling. Yiling looked at Miss Qi, her expression calm. "You want to capture me and then threaten my brother." Miss Qi smiled. "You guessed half right." Yiling suddenly disappeared. Miss Qi's eyes flashed with surprise and she flicked her sleeve. Boom. A powerful force suddenly shook in front of her, and this powerful force directly pushed her out of the hall. Outside the hall, Miss Qi looked at her palm, which was covered in a layer of ice. Lady Qi looked at Yiling and said softly, "What a powerful cold energy. I've seriously underestimated you." Yiling looked at Miss Qi. Suddenly she spread her right hand and with a gentle gesture, a door appeared behind her. An immortal sect. The immortal Dao sect's supreme treasure. The moment the door appeared, Miss Qi frowned. At the same time, Yiling suddenly performed a hand seal. Immortal Gate Spirit Seal. As soon as she finished speaking, the door behind her suddenly trembled violently. In the next moment, a huge palm flew out from the door. In the distance, the corners of Miss Qi's mouth lifted slightly. Interesting. As soon as she finished speaking, she gently pressed her right hand forward. Boom. The giant hand in the immortal sect was forced to stop in its tracks. Then Lady Qi lightly pressed her palm forward, and in an instant, the gigantic hand turned into nothingness. At this time, Yiling's body suddenly floated in the air. She clasped her hands together in midair. Myriad immortals gather. With that, the gate of immortality suddenly turned into a white light and entered her body. Boom. A monstrous pressure exploded from within Yiling's body, and the pressure forced Miss Qi back dozens of feet. Miss Qi looked at Yiling and said softly, "End realm." At this moment Yiling's realm had reached the end realm. Looking at Miss Qi, Yiling raised her hand and struck out. Boom. As soon as the palm landed, it was like a volcanic eruption, and a powerful force swept towards Miss Qi. Miss Qi said softly, "It's time to end this." As soon as she finished speaking, she clenched her right hand. In an instant, a strange talisman appeared on her fist, and in the next moment she punched out. Rumble. The force released by Yiling exploded, and Yiling was forced back hundreds of feet. The force exploded and Yiling was forced back hundreds of feet. Yiling glanced at the talisman on Miss Qi's fist. Miss Qi smiled and said, "This is a Dao law, a four-dimensional Dao law." Yiling said softly, "My brother has one too, and it's a five-dimensional one." Five-dimensional. Miss Qi smiled and said, "I've heard of it. I'd like to see it for myself." Yiling suddenly looked behind Miss Qi and said happily, "Brother." Miss Qi turned around and there was nothing in front of her. In the next moment she turned again, and by this time, Yiling had already disappeared into the horizon. He escaped. Miss Qi was slightly stunned. He still knows how to escape? As she said this, she shook her head and smiled. In the distant horizon, Yiling suddenly stopped because there was an old man in front of her. Yiling was silent. At this moment, Miss Qi appeared in front of her. Miss Qi smiled and said, "I really want to know if your brother will really do anything for you." Yiling suddenly looked down and said, "Mizzen." Mizzen. As soon as she finished speaking, a spear suddenly shot up from below. Up in the air, Lady Qi frowned. She pointed out with her finger directly at the tip of the spear. Bang. Miss Qi retreated several feet, and at this moment, a woman appeared in front of Yiling dressed in snow-white clothes. It was Xianxia. Xianxia opened her palm and a spear appeared in her hand. She looked at Miss Qi and without a word she raised her hand and stabbed with her spear. Bang. A powerful force instantly drowned Miss Qi. In front of Xianxia, Miss Qi punched out. Bang. Xianxia and her spear were instantly blasted back, but in the next moment she mysteriously appeared in front of Miss Qi. Bang. 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 Explosions resounded incessantly in the air. Not far away, Yiling didn't stand by idly. She was about to attack, but the old man in front of her blocked her way. Yiling looked at the old man and didn't waste her breath. Her figure shook, and she shot explosively towards the old man like a ray of icy light. At the same time, Zhou Yafu and Mu Nanji appeared in the air as well. Under the joint forces of the two of them and Yiling, the old man was directly suppressed. In the sky, countless soldiers from the north had surrounded Miss Qi and the old man. Bang. An explosion suddenly erupted in the air, and then two figures retreated explosively. They were exactly Xianxia and Miss Qi. Miss Qi glanced at Xianxia and then she glanced at the surroundings before she said softly, "I made a mistake." Mistake. Before she came here, she thought that only Yi Xian was capable of fighting in the entire northern territory. But the facts before her eyes told her that besides Yi Xian, everyone else in the northern territory wasn't weak. Especially Xianxia and the others. All of them were extremely outstanding even in the Sky-Earth world. Miss Qi suddenly gazed at Yiling. Meanwhile, Xianxia was standing in front of Yiling. Miss Qi grinned, and then she opened her palm. A black talisman suddenly transformed into a ray of black light and vanished. Xianxia's expression changed drastically when she witnessed this scene, and she swiftly turned around. However, Yiling had vanished. Xianxia turned around to gaze at Miss Qi, but Miss Qi and the old man had vanished. They'd vanished. Xianxia and the others had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces. Jiang Jiu, who stood by Xianxia's side, spoke solemnly, "Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen." Everyone fell silent. Everyone knew what Yiling meant to Yi Xian. Xianxia looked towards the horizon and spoke softly, "I've already notified him." Jiang Jiu spoke solemnly. He said in a deep voice, "Pass down my order. Investigate the background of that woman." The universe. The Yellow Mistress sat silently in the hall, and there was a memorial in front of her. After a short while she spoke softly, "The Xianyuan clan has made a move." An old man by her side spoke solemnly, "Xianyuan Qi?" The Yellow Mistress nodded, "The Wu clan should be behind it." She chuckled lightly, "They still haven't given up on that precious treasure." The old man bowed slightly, "Your Majesty, Can that precious treasure really lead to the fifth dimension? The yellow mistress nodded. It should be. Because the news came from that place. That place. The old man's expression became solemn. At that moment the yellow mistress shook her head and chuckled. But they have never thought about why such a precious treasure would fall into the hands of Zhou Xian. No, they should have thought about it, but the temptation of the treasure is too great. The old man nodded. Entering the fifth dimension and changing one's fate is a temptation that they can't refuse. Moreover, Zhou Xian is not a simple person. This time the two clans took away Zhou Xian's sister. With Zhou Xian's temper, there's really no way to resolve this peacefully. The yellow mistress spoke softly. That treasure. Who wouldn't be tempted? As she spoke, she closed the memorial in front of her. Keep an eye on it. The old man nodded and retreated quietly. In the hall, the yellow mistress looked at the memorial in front of her quietly. After a long time she suddenly said, "Let our people kill Yiling, don't expose yourself." She got up and walked to the door of the hall. She said softly, "Once Yiling dies, you will probably fight them at all cost. I'm looking forward to it." Hee hee. Somewhere in the clouds, Xianxia looked at Yiling in front of her. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't kill you." Yiling was silent. Xianxia turned and looked into the distance. She said softly, "Sword Emperor Tingyun is an unknown realm expert. If she comes out, she should be able to restrain the woman in the plain dress." Immortal Sword Sect. As soon as Zhou Xian entered the Immortal Sword World, he felt many powerful sword wills. The entire Immortal Sword World was filled with sword wills. Moreover, these sword wills were extremely powerful. In the sky, flying swords flew past from time to time. What a good place. As Zhou Xian was about to move forward, a middle-aged swordsman appeared in front of him. The middle-aged swordsman looked at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian smiled and said, "I heard that the Immortal Sword Sect has countless experts. I am untalented, so I have come to challenge you." The middle-aged swordsman said in a deep voice, "Zhou Xian, my sect master wants to have a talk with you." Zhou Xian smiled. He was about to speak when the space in front of him suddenly trembled. Zhou Xian frowned. A moment later his expression turned ferocious. At the same time, a blood-red sword chi rushed out of his body and into the sky. In an instant the entire sky was dyed blood-red. Bloodline activation. Seeing this, the middle-aged man in front of Zhou Xian changed his expression. Zhou Xian suddenly disappeared. The middle-aged man's head flew off. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Zhou Xian raised his head and looked in the direction of the Immortal Sword Sect. His expression was twisted. "Immortal Sword Sect. How dare you touch my sister?" As his voice fell, a blood-red sword light suddenly flew across the Immortal Sword World. As this blood-red sword light flew past, the space began to crack inch by inch. P.S. Brothers, I want to apply for leave. Apply for 2 days of leave. Can you do it? Chapter 699. The entire Immortal Sword World was shocked. It didn't take long for the blood-red ray of light to arrive at the Immortal Sword Sect. Meanwhile, a sword suddenly slashed down from above the Immortal Sword Sect. Bang! The blood-red ray of light was forced to a stop, but the sword itself exploded apart. The blood-red ray of light in the sky above the Immortal Sword Sect dispersed, and then Zhou Xian appeared before the disciples of the Sword Sect. At this moment Zhou Xian's entire body was blood-red, and he emanated a vicious aura. A vicious aura. Jian Shifeng gazed at Zhou Xian. "Zhou Xian, you..." At this moment Zhou Xian suddenly disappeared. A sharp sound of tearing resounded abruptly. Jian Shifeng frowned slightly, and then he pressed his fingers together and pointed forward. A ray of light appeared on the tip of his finger. Bang! Zhou Xian was forced to a stop, but Jian Shifeng himself was pushed over 10 back. Jian Shifeng gazed at the sword in Zhou Xian's hand. "What a good sword. You..." Meanwhile Zhou Xian vanished again. A sword howl shook the sky. Jian Shifeng's eyes narrowed slightly, and then a ray of light flashed through them. A moment later he suddenly charged forward, and an expanse of light instantly enveloped Zhou Xian. Flash! Suddenly, a furious shout resounded from the sky above the Immortal Sword Sect, and then an expanse of blood-red light erupted from the sky above the Immortal Sword Sect. Rumble! The space in the sky above the Immortal Sword Sect cracked apart. At the same time, Jian Shifeng was pushed over 100 back, and the sword in his hand had cracked apart. Jian Shifeng glanced at the sword in his hand, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. He was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly pointed the executing heaven sword at him and spoke fiercely, "Immortal sword sect. Where's my younger sister?" "Younger sister?" Jian Shifeng frowned slightly. "Yi Xian, what did you say?" Yi Xian roared, "Where is my sister?" As soon as he finished speaking, an expanse of blood-red sword light suddenly shook the sky. In an instant the space above the immortal sword sect was directly torn apart. Jian Shifeng glared at Yi Xian. "Are you crazy? You..." Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Kill. A blood-red sword light instantly appeared in front of Jian Shifeng. Jian Shifeng's face turned cold, and with a flick of his wrist, a sword light shot out. Boom. This sword strike directly slashed apart Yi Xian's sword light, but the sword in Jian Shifeng's hand had already shattered. At the same time, Jian Shifeng's entire body was blasted back several dozen meters. Jian Shifeng looked at Yi Xian. At this moment his heart was filled with shock. This Yi Xian's strength had far exceeded his expectations. After repelling Jian Shifeng, Yi Xian once again disappeared. In the next instant, a wave of blood-red sword light directly covered the entire sky above the immortal sword sect. Jian Shifeng did not dare to be careless. He immediately stomped his right foot, turned into a sword light and shot out. Chi 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 chi. In an instant, countless ripping sounds resounded in the sky above the immortal sword sect. In the sky, Jian Shifeng explosively retreated. Seeing this scene, all the experts of the immortal sword sect were shocked. They did not expect their sect leader to be suppressed by Yi Xian. One must know that Jian Shifeng was a famous super expert in the black-yellow great world. Moreover, he was ranked 6th on the sovereign list. But now he was actually suppressed by a youth in his 20s. Boom. At this time in the sky above the immortal sword sect, Jian Shifeng was directly forced back several hundred meters by Yi Xian's sword. Jian Shifeng looked at the distant Yi Xian with a solemn expression. Yi Xian's combat strength was somewhat abnormal. It should be said that Yi Xian's current enhancements were too great. The power of bloodline, the power of earth, the power of space, and the golden armor he wore. Of course, the most important was the sword in Yi Xian's hand. The lethality of that sword was simply too great. The reason why Yi Xian could suppress him was that Yi Xian had that sword. In the distance, Yi Xian was about to strike again. Qingqing Yi clan's ancestral shrine. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as heir apparent will be replaced by Yi Lang. The speaker was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was none other than Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral shrine. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to the people in the ancestral shrine and said timidly, "Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a heir. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Grand Elder coldly looked at Yi Ling. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Grand Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral shrine. She once again bowed to the elders on both sides. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan Hill. He is fighting for the clan and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The Grand Elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new heir Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Grand Elder coldly replied, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new heir Yilang and he knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yilang inherits the title of heir and it's everyone's wish. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yiling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the heir." Yilang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the heir I'll need 10 personal guards. You can be my personal guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate will go through water and tread on fire for the heir, and I won't hesitate to die 10,000 times. Yilang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back, understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang and when he saw the killing intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this time Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was dressed in a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Zhou Xian who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The great elder's eyes narrowed and his expression was frighteningly dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his expression turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his expression changed. He hurriedly looked at Yilang and just as he was about to speak, Zhou Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yiling did not stop and he rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yilang suddenly roared, "Zhou Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's expression turned ugly, while Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's appearance, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Zhou Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on Zhou Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yilang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yilang. On both sides there were the elders of the Yi clan. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yiling and she was Zhou Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Zhou Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yiling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yiling bowed to everyone in the hall as she asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother Zhou Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yiling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave." Yiling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead she plucked up her courage and walked into the hall. Once again she bowed to the elders. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair." Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yilang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yilang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yilang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yiling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. This subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince. Yilang nodded. You are very good. After I become the prince I will need 10 guards. From now on you will be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death. Yilang nodded slightly. Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu did not know what he saw but he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe and the robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Zhou Xian who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his expression turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his expression changed. He quickly looked at Yilang and was about to speak, when Zhou Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu's head spun and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there and he rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yilang suddenly roared, Zhou Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's expression turned ugly, while Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's appearance, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Chapter 700. Bloodline. Zhou Xian, who was about to attack, was stunned when he heard this woman. Someone has the same bloodline as me? Meanwhile, the woman suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian hadn't even reacted when she pressed her hand down on Zhou Xian's shoulder. In the next moment Zhou Xian's boiling blood calmed down. Zhou Xian gradually returned to normal. The woman gazed at Zhou Xian. Suddenly she frowned slightly, and then she patted Zhou Xian's shoulder lightly with her right hand. Come out. As soon as she spoke, a sword suddenly flew out from the top of the pagoda. When she saw the sword, the woman in the yellow dress was stunned. The sword trembled as if it was greeting the yellow-dressed woman. Zhou Xian was stunned as well. The woman in front of him recognized this sword? The woman stretched out her hand to take hold of the sword, and there was a rather complicated expression in her eyes. I never expected that I would meet you in such a manner. Where's your master? The sword trembled in response. The woman grinned. I understand. When she spoke up to hear, she gazed at Zhou Xian and she sized Zhou Xian up before she spoke softly. Madman? Zhou Xian asked. Senior madman? She gazed at Zhou Xian. You don't know about your bloodline? Zhou Xian shook his head. She gazed at Zhou Xian. Where's your father? Father? Zhou Xian shook his head. I don't know. But Senior seems to know. The woman frowned slightly. A short moment later she seemed to have thought of something and she grinned. He naturally has his reasons for not telling me. I won't say anything about it. When she spoke up to here she sized up Zhou Xian and said, your cultivation in the sword Dao isn't weak. However, it can be improved. As soon as she finished speaking she patted Zhou Xian's shoulder once more. In the next moment, a powerful strand of sword intent entered Zhou Xian's body. Everyone was petrified when they witnessed this scene. What's going on? What was going on? Weren't they summoned to deal with Zhou Xian? Why did he help Zhou Xian? In the clouds Shen Yuanqi's face was gloomy. No one knew what she was thinking. Below, Jian Shifeng's mind went blank. The ancestor he called out was actually helping Zhou Xian improve? Could it be that he had called a fake ancestral master? Zhou Xian was also a little confused at this moment. He was ready to fight to the death. However, he didn't expect things to turn out like this. The ancestral master of the Immortal Sword sect actually wanted to help him improve. At this moment, Jian Shifeng walked in front of the yellow-robed woman. He bowed respectfully. Ancestor. The yellow-dressed woman looked at Jian Shifeng. What's the matter? Jian Shifeng looked at Zhou Xian and spoke in a solemn voice. Ancestor, this person destroyed my physical body and killed countless disciples of my Immortal Sword sect. He deserves 1,000 deaths. The yellow-dressed woman's brows knit together slightly when she heard this, and then she turned to look at Zhou Xian. You probably wouldn't kill people for no reason. Tell me your reason. Jian Shifeng was speechless. Zhou Xian hesitated for a moment and then he told her everything. He didn't exaggerate too much but he did lick up the truth a little. As soon as Zhou Xian finished speaking the yellow-dressed woman's face turned icy cold, and she gazed at Jian Shifeng. As a swordsman, you actually went to deal with a little girl? Jian Shifeng's expression changed and he hurriedly said, Ancestor, my Immortal Sword sect wasn't targeting his younger sister. It was someone else. The yellow-dressed woman gazed coldly at Jian Shifeng. Then why did you target him? Jian Shifeng was stunned and then he quickly gazed at Zhou Xian. At this moment he was completely dumbfounded. Which side was the patriarch on? Just at this moment the yellow-dressed woman suddenly raised her head and looked at the sky. Seeing this, Shen Yuanqi's expression changed, and her body trembled as she retreated. The yellow-dressed woman pointed upwards. A sword ring charged into the sky. A voice suddenly rang out in the clouds. Protect little miss. The moment the voice landed, 20 End Realm experts blocked in front of Shen Yuanqi. 20 of them attacked at the same time. 20 peak End Realm experts attacking at the same time. How terrifying was that? However, as the yellow-dressed woman's sword slashed down, the heads of the 20 people flew into the air at the same time. However, Shen Yuanqi was already tens of thousands of miles away. The yellow-dressed woman looked coldly at the end of the sky, and then she pointed forwards. Go! Boo! A sword light instantly appeared 10,000 miles away. Thousands of miles away, Shen Yuanqi's expression changed. She suddenly turned around and opened her right hand. A golden talisman flew out of her palm. The moment the talisman flew out, a brilliant golden light exploded from it. Sword arrived. Hong. The golden light instantly turned into nothingness, and Shen Yuanqi was blasted tens of thousands of feet away. However, the yellow-dressed woman's sword didn't disappear. Shen Yuanqi hadn't even stopped when the sword appeared in front of her once more. When she saw this, Shen Yuanqi's pupils constricted, and her face turned ashen white. She couldn't block that sword at all. However, right at this moment, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Shen Yuanqi. The old man reached out with his right hand and then he spun it. In an instant, the space where his palm landed turned into a pitch-black whirlpool. Sword arrived. Hong. In an instant, the old man and Shen Yuanqi were pushed back 3 kilometers. However, the yellow-dressed woman's sword still hadn't disappeared. However, at this moment, the old man and Shen Yuanqi had vanished. Within the Celestial Sword sect, the yellow-dressed woman retracted her gaze and looked at Jian Shifeng. Who was that person just now? Jian Shifeng hesitated for a moment and then he said, Shenyuan family. Shenyuan family. The yellow-dressed woman was stunned. Shenyuan family? Jian Shifeng nodded. A trace of bewilderment flashed through her eyes, and then she looked at Zhou Xian. Why is the Shenyuan family targeting you? Zhou Xian spoke in a low voice. I have a treasure in my possession and they probably want it. A treasure? The yellow-dressed woman said. Can you let me have a look? Yi Xian nodded and then he withdrew the World Prison Pagoda. When she saw the World Prison Pagoda, her expression gradually became solemn, a fifth-dimensional treasure. When she spoke up to hear, her brows suddenly knit together and then she shouted, "Come out." As soon as she finished speaking, a sword appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was the sword of the woman in a plain dress. The yellow-dressed woman was stunned when she saw the sword, and then she looked at Yi Xian. "Why is that sword in your possession?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then he said, "A senior gave it to me." The yellow-dressed woman asked, "A woman in a plain dress?" Yi Xian gazed at the yellow-dressed woman with slight surprise. "Senior, you know her?" A complicated expression suddenly appeared on her face. "I never expected that she would actually give this sword to you." As she spoke, she gazed at Jian Shifeng. "What sort of deal did that person make with you just now?" Jian Shifeng spoke in a low voice. "She wants the founding ancestor to restrain the woman in a plain dress and then they'll kill." When he spoke up to hear, he gazed at Yi Xian. "Kill him." The yellow-dressed woman shook her head. "Restrain the woman in a plain dress. Are all of you trying to kill me?" Jian Shifeng spoke in a low voice. "Founding ancestor, who exactly is that woman in a plain dress?" The yellow-dressed woman glanced at Jian Shifeng. "You actually placed the entire Immortal Sword sect in a hopeless situation for your own selfishness. What right do you have to be the sect master?" As soon as she finished speaking, she glanced at the surroundings and said, "From this moment onward, the sect master of the Immortal Sword sect is Yi Xian." Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they heard this. "The sect master of the Immortal Sword sect is Yi Xian? What's going on?" All the disciples of the Immortal Sword sect were petrified. Jian Shifeng's mind had gone blank as well. "You want Yi Xian to be the sect master of the Immortal Sword sect? Did I really ask a fake founding ancestor to step forward?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "Senior." "This." The yellow-dressed woman gazed at Yi Xian. "What?" Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "Isn't that a little inappropriate?" The yellow-dressed woman gazed at Yi Xian. "What's inappropriate about that?" "From this moment onward, you're the sect master of my Immortal Sword sect. I've decided on that." Yi Xian glanced at the crowd below and spoke in a low voice. "They refuse to accept it." The yellow-dressed woman glanced at them. "Does anyone refuse to accept it?" No one spoke. The yellow-dressed woman remained expressionless. "I created the Immortal Sword sect. Since I was able to create it, I can naturally destroy it." Their expressions instantly changed when they heard this. The founding ancestor is really angry. Countless people hurriedly bowed respectfully. "We all accept it." The yellow-dressed woman gazed at Yi Xian. "If anyone refuses to accept it, you can kill them." Yi Xian gazed at the yellow-dressed woman. "Why?" The yellow-dressed woman grinned. "I owed him a great favor all those years ago. Now that I've met you." When she spoke up to hear, she hesitated for a moment before she continued. "There are some things that I won't tell you in detail about." The yellow-dressed woman looked up into the sky and spoke softly. "The Xianyuan clan isn't simple. Their clan has a divine sword. That sword was given to me by him all those years ago. I don't quite understand why his descendants would target you. That shouldn't be the case." Yi Xian was quite puzzled. "Senior." The yellow-dressed woman gazed at Yi Xian. "I executed a few attacks just now, and this clone's spirit energy has been completely exhausted. If we're fated to meet again in the future, then I hope we'll meet again." As soon as she finished speaking, her body turned completely illusory. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he gazed at Jian Shifeng. "It was the Xianyuan clan that took my younger sister away?" Jian Shifeng remained silent. Suddenly Yi Xian raised his hand and swung his sword. Jian Shifeng's head instantly flew into the air while blood sprayed out like a fountain. Jian Shifeng's eyes opened wide and they were filled with disbelief. "I died just like that." On the other hand, the disciples of the Immortal Sword sect were flabbergasted. "He was killed just like that." Yi Xian glanced coldly at the surroundings. "Can anyone answer my question?" Meanwhile, a disciple of the Immortal Sword sect flew over to Yi Xian, and he bowed slightly to Yi Xian. "Sect master, that person just now was the Xianyuan clan's Xianyuan Qi. She's the eldest young miss of the Xianyuan clan." "The Xianyuan clan?" Yi Xian's face was expressionless. "Where is the Xianyuan clan?" The disciple hesitated for a moment before he said, "Xianyuan world." Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings. I'll get someone to take over the Immortal Sword Sect. Those who don't want to stay can leave. As soon as he finished speaking, he'd vanished. His destination Xianyuan world. P.S. Many people agreed with my request for leave yesterday. Silence represented agreement, and many people didn't speak, which meant that they agreed. That's how I understand it. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Chapter 701. The members of the Immortal Sword Sect glanced at each other with complicated expressions on their faces. They hadn't expected things to turn out like this. Their mortal enemy had actually become their sect master. What should we do now? Meanwhile, a young swordsman suddenly asked. What should we do? All the other swordsmen fell silent. What else could they do? After all, Zhou Xian was the sect master that their founding ancestor had personally appointed. If they didn't respect Zhou Xian, then it would be equivalent to betraying their founding ancestor. Suddenly, the number one expert in the Immortal Sword Sect's younger generation, Eugene Zhao, stepped forward. He glanced at them and said, Everyone, did all of you notice the founding ancestor's attitude towards Sect Master Yi? Attitude. All of them fell silent when they heard this. Their founding ancestor's attitude towards Zhou Xian really had been quite unusual. It was like how a senior treated a junior. Eugene Zhao continued, If I'm not wrong, then the founding ancestor probably has some sort of relationship with Zhou Xian. Or perhaps the founding ancestor knows the person behind Zhou Xian. When he spoke up to this point, he glanced at all of them and continued, The founding ancestor's wisdom is definitely above all of us, so she definitely has her reasons for making such a decision. Besides that, did all of you notice how my Immortal Sword Sect cooperated with the Xianyuan clan? Yet how did the Xianyuan clan treat my Immortal Sword Sect? The Xianyuan clan. The expressions of all the swordsmen instantly turned gloomy when they heard this. They weren't idiots, so they naturally knew who the culprit was. The Xianyuan clan was using the Immortal Sword Sect. Eugene Zhao continued, One last thing that all of you have to understand is that the founding ancestor would never harm my Immortal Sword Sect. On the contrary, she might have made such a decision to protect my Immortal Sword Sect. All of them gazed at Eugene Zhao, and then an old swordsman asked in a low voice, Jin Zhao, are you saying that the founding ancestor made Zhou Xian the sect master of my Immortal Sword Sect because she wanted to protect my Immortal Sword Sect? Eugene Zhao nodded. Back then, the ancestral master had already stepped into the unknown realm. There were very few people in the world who could make her feel fear. The reason why she made Zhou Xian the sect master of our Immortal Sword Sect is definitely not just because she has some relationship with Zhou Xian, but because she knows the person behind Zhou Xian. That person's strength is something that even the martial ancestor is wary of. The expressions of everyone here instantly changed when they heard this. Someone who could strike fear into the hearts of an unknown realm expert. At this moment, Eugene Zhao added, No matter what, we have no other choice now. Sect Master Yi was appointed by the ancestral master. If we don't accept it, it will be the same as betraying the ancestral master. Of course, as Sect Master Yi said, everyone has their own ambitions. If you want to leave, you can do so at any time. Everyone was silent. No one moved. Zhou Xian was appointed by the patriarch. Denying Zhou Xian was equivalent to denying Sword Emperor Tingyun, and denying Sword Emperor Tingyun was a great disrespect. Eugene Zhao continued, Everyone, this time our Immortal Sword Sect has suffered heavy losses. The biggest reason is the Xianyuan family. They took away Sect Master Ye's younger sister and framed our Immortal Sword Sect. Then they forced the Sword Sect Master to summon the Ancestral Master. At this point he looked at the crowd. Right now my Immortal Sword Sect needs someone who isn't afraid of the Xianyuan clan. Otherwise I'm afraid my Immortal Sword Sect will be completely devoured by the Xianyuan clan, or devoured by another power. An old man next to Eugene Zhao nodded. The Xianyuan family has evil intentions. However, this Zhou Xian, he killed the Sword Sect Master. Eugene Zhao looked at the old man. Do you still not understand? We are not important to him. If there is a need, he doesn't mind killing us as well. Hearing this, the crowd was shocked. At this moment they suddenly realized that this sect leader Yi didn't particularly need these people. In the clouds, Zhou Xian was flying on his sword. At this moment, a powerful sword intent was being emitted from his body. Previously in the Immortal Sword Sect, Sword Emperor Tingyun had given him a strand of sword intent. This strand of sword intent was currently in his body. Zhou Xian closed his eyes. His right hand gripped the executing heaven sword tightly as a red glow gradually appeared on his body. His bloodline started to boil again. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Boom. In his eyes, two beams of sword light shot out like lightning. Wherever the sword light passed, the space would be torn apart. At the same time, two strands of sword intent suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. One of them was black and the other was white. They spiraled around Yi Xian like two swords. Good and evil sword intent. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly extended his hand and clenched. The two strands of sword intent suddenly condensed into two swords. The evil good sword. Yi Xian took a deep breath. The two swords before him shook violently, and then they transformed into two rays of sword light that shot into the sky. Extraordinary sword god. Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. In the next moment he vanished. Xianyuan world. The Xianyuan clan and the Wu clan were the two strongest clans in the Xuanhuan world. They had a long history, but their true strength had always been a mystery. Because there hadn't been a war in the Xuanhuan world for too long, the powers in the Xuanhuan world had always been expanding, or rather plundering. On the other hand, there were very few wars in the Xuanhuan world itself. Therefore only the Xianyuan clan and the Wu clan knew the true strength of the two clans. Within the Xianyuan world, Xianyuan Qi sat cross-legged in midair amidst the clouds. A black-clothed old man stood by her side. The old man was expressionless and had a rather gloomy expression. After a long time Xianyuan Qi opened her eyes. At this moment her face was as pale as a piece of paper. Xianyuan Qi said solemnly, "Why?" Till now she still didn't understand how everything that she had planned out had turned out to be like this. To let the celestial sword sect ancestor appear and restrict the woman. In the end she would appear to kill Yi Xian. That way the losses of the Xianyuan family could be minimized. That was because if the Xianyuan family went up against the woman, even if they won, they would suffer heavy losses. But if the celestial sword sect ancestor restricted the woman, then the losses of the Xianyuan family could be minimized. That was because just one Yi Xian wasn't enough to shake the Xianyuan family. However, what she didn't expect was that after Sword Emperor Tingyun appeared, not only did he not attack Yi Xian, but he even helped Yi Xian improve. What she didn't expect was that he even attacked her and killed 20 Xianyuan family End Realm experts. 20 End Realm experts. These were all carefully nurtured by the Xianyuan family. Xianyuan Qi's face was dark and sunken. She had never felt so frustrated in her life. She had called an enemy out. At this moment the black-shirt old man suddenly said, "This Sword Emperor Tingyun seems to know Yi Xian." "Know Yi Xian?" Xianyuan Qi said solemnly. "How is that possible? This Sword Emperor Tingyun and Yi Xian are so many years apart, so how would she know Yi Xian?" The black-shirt old man shook his head. "I don't know. However, she definitely knows Yi Xian, or rather she knows the person behind Yi Xian." Woman in a plain dress. Xianyuan Qi frowned. "Where did she come from?" The black-shirt old man said, "I don't know." Xianyuan Qi looked at the old man. "Even my Xianyuan family can't find out her background?" The black-clothed old man nodded. "We've already used all of our resources, but we still can't find out her origins. What we know now is that the treasure in this person's possession should have been given by her. As for why she gave that treasure to Yi Xian, we don't know." Xianyuan Qi said solemnly, "What about her strength?" The black-shirt old man was silent for a moment before he said, "At least Deng Feng. Maybe even half-step unknown." "At least Deng Feng. Half-step unknown." Xianyuan Qi was silent for a long time before she asked, "Could she be in the unknown realm?" The black-shirt old man shook his head. "Based on the strength she has shown so far, she shouldn't be in the unknown realm." Xianyuan Qi shook her head. "I thought we could use Sword Emperor Tingyun to restrain the woman and find out her true strength at the same time. I didn't expect things to turn out like this." As she spoke up to hear, she suddenly opened her palm and a bright light flashed in her palm. The black-shirt old man asked, "What is it?" Xianyuan Qi said solemnly, "Yi Xian is the Immortal Sword Sect Master." The black-shirt old man frowned. "It was Sword Emperor Tingyun?" Xianyuan Qi nodded. "He allowed Yi Xian to become the Immortal Sword Sect Master before he vanished." When she spoke up to this point, she gazed at the black-shirt old man. "Yi Xian is rushing towards our Xianyuan world." The black-shirt old man's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard this. "Has he gone mad?" Xianyuan Qi said solemnly, "Don't be careless. The black-shirt old man was about to speak when a sword howl suddenly resounded from the distant horizon. Both of them looked towards the horizon at the same time, and there was a patch of blood red at the end of the horizon. It's here. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly. He's really gone mad. When the sword howl resounded throughout the entire Xianxia world, the entire world was shocked. An enemy has come? Zhou Xian stood silently in midair while the celestial sword was in his hand. At this moment, boundless energy of the earth was converging towards him like tide water. Moreover, the space around him had started to gradually tremble. The energy of the earth and the energy of space. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian. The middle-aged man gazed at Zhou Xian, and he was about to speak when Zhou Xian suddenly vanished. The middle-aged man's eyes opened wide. Zhou Xian was nowhere to be seen, but numerous sword marks were appearing incessantly on the middle-aged man's body. In less than a breath of time, the middle-aged man had been sliced into countless pieces. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian had returned to where he stood before this dream sword. When the middle-aged man recovered from his shock, he was already dead. Instant kill. Zhou Xian raised his head and gazed into the distance. Meanwhile, numerous powerful auras surrounded him from all directions. A black-shirt old man suddenly appeared not too far away from Zhou Xian, and it was the black-shirt old man who'd stood by Xianxia's side earlier. The black-shirt old man glanced at the middle-aged man's corpse, and then he looked at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian, this isn't the Immortal Sword sect. Zhou Xian suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the black-shirt old man. My sister was captured by you? The black-shirt old man smiled. Indeed. As he spoke, he looked at Zhou Xian. Why do you want to annihilate my Xianxia family? Zhou Xian fell silent. The black-shirt old man smiled. My Xianxia family has existed for nearly 80,000 years. Since ancient times, countless sects and forces have been annihilated, but my Xianxia family still exists. Not to mention you, Zhou Xian, even if the woman behind you came out, so what? So what? Chapter 702. Confidence. The black-clothed old man was naturally confident. The Xianxia clan had experienced too many things since its founding. In the history of the Xianxia clan, there had been 3 unknown realm experts. Not only that, the first patriarch of the Xianxia clan had been the strongest expert of the Xianxia Great World and the first person to break into the 5th dimension. Even the black-clothed old man himself did not fully understand the Xianxia clan's heritage. He only knew that even if the Xianxia clan was not the strongest in the Xianxia Great World, no one would dare to bully them. This was because the Xianxia clan had once clashed with an unknown realm expert of the Xianxia Great World, but the Xianxia clan still existed. Moreover, there had been no unknown realm expert in the Xianxia clan at that time. The Xianxia clan did not look down on the plain-dressed woman, but they were not afraid either. Otherwise, they would not have targeted Zhou Xian. Moreover, the Xianxia clan was not the only one targeting Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian and the plain-dressed woman had many enemies. The Xianxia clan was just one of them. Zhou Xian stood quietly in front of the black-clothed old man, saying nothing. The black-clothed old man smiled. Zhou Xian. At this moment, Zhou Xian suddenly disappeared. A ray of sword light pierced the black-clothed old man's throat. The black-clothed old man's voice came to an abrupt halt. His eyes were wide open, filled with disbelief. How can instant kill? At this moment, Zhou Xian was no longer there. Immeasurable sword. Facing the black-clothed old man, Zhou Xian decisively used immeasurable sword. Only the immeasurable sword and the prison pagoda could kill the black-clothed old man at the fastest speed. After using the immeasurable sword, Zhou Xian immediately escaped into emptiness. When the experts of the Xianxia clan arrived, Zhou Xian was no longer there. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared in front of the black-clothed old man. The middle-aged man wore a brocade robe and held a black pearl in his hand. The pearl was crystal clear and constantly overflowed with black light. This person was the number 2 figure of the Xianxia clan, Xianxia. He was the younger brother of the Xianxia clan's patriarch. Xianxia looked at the elder. The elder's body became more and more illusory as he stared at Xianxia. Don't underestimate. Before he could finish speaking, he had already completely disappeared. Xianxia fell silent for a moment, and then he slowly closed his eyes. In an instant, his divine sense enveloped the entire Xianxia world like an enormous net. Even a tiny ant thousands of miles away couldn't escape his divine sense. However, he did not find Yi Xian. It was as if Yi Xian had completely disappeared. Xianyuan frowned. How is that possible? He seemed to have thought of something and his eyes narrowed slightly. In the next moment he vanished. At this moment Yi Xian was in a very strange space. He was still in the four-dimensional universe, but at the same time, it felt like he was not in the four-dimensional universe. This feeling was indescribable. Emptiness. After using the immeasurable sword, he immediately chose to escape into emptiness, because this time he was going to face the entire Xianyuan clan. Moreover, even though he wouldn't suffer any backlash from using the immeasurable sword, the sword would absorb all the spiritual energy in his body. Moreover, his body would become fatigued as well. According to his estimations, after he used the immeasurable sword once, he would need at least 4 hours before he could use it again. 4 hours was enough. Yi Xian took out a crystal. The crystal in his hand was called a raw crystal. He had obtained it from the northern region king, and it was several grades higher than a divine crystal. Yi Xian began to absorb the raw crystal. As soon as the raw crystal entered his stomach, a wave of pure energy immediately spread out from his body. Just like that, about 4 hours later, Yi Xian disappeared. At this moment, the Xianyuan clan was on high alert because Yi Xian had disappeared. The Xianyuan clan was quite afraid of Yi Xian, because Yi Xian had killed an expert half a step into the Ascended Seal realm. That was an instant kill. Moreover, he had disappeared immediately after killing him, so even the Xianyuan clan could not trace his whereabouts. If Yi Xian had come openly, the Xianyuan clan would not have been afraid. But the problem was that Yi Xian had come secretly. Countless divine senses swept across the entire Xianyuan realm. In a large hall, Xianyuan Qi knelt in front of a statue of a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked forward, and there was a sword without a scabbard on his waist. The sword was golden with the sun, moon and stars carved on one side and mountains, rivers and plants carved on the other. On one side of the hilt there were martial arts and magic skills, and on the other side there was a strategy to unify the world. Divine sword. This sword was the #1 sword in the black-yellow great world. Xianyuan Qi knelt in front of the statue silent. At this moment an old man appeared in front of Xianyuan Qi and the old man said softly, "Get up." Xianyuan Qi shook her head. "It's my fault." The old man said, "You're at fault, but it's not all your fault. No one thought that sword Emperor Tingyun would help Yi Xian." Xianyuan Qi was silent. The old man said, "Failure is not scary. What is scary is being discouraged and unable to recover after failure." With that he turned and disappeared. In the hall, Xianyuan Qi was silent for a long time. After a long time she suddenly said, "Come out." As soon as she spoke, Yi Xian appeared behind her. The moment Yi Xian appeared, countless experts of the Xianyuan clan suddenly appeared outside the hall. Xianyuan Shao was at the entrance of the hall. Xianyuan Shao looked at Yi Xian, not saying anything. Yi Xian looked at Xianyuan Qi. Xianyuan Qi smiled. "Are you curious why I knew you would appear here?" At this moment, a sword suddenly pierced the back of her neck. The sword penetrated half an inch and blood gushed out. In an instant, Xianyuan Qi's back was dyed red with blood. Seeing this, the experts of the Xianyuan clan paled. They were about to attack, but Xianyuan Shao stopped them. Because Xianyuan Qi was his daughter. Xianyuan Shao looked at Yi Xian. "Men's affairs should be settled by men." Yi Xian suddenly turned his head and roared, "Then your Xianyuan clan kidnapped my sister?" Xianyuan Shao glanced at Yi Xian and then at Xianyuan Qi. "Release his sister." Yi Xian looked at Xianyuan Qi. Xianyuan Qi remained silent. Yi Xian suddenly raised his hand and slashed down. Xianyuan Qi's entire right arm was cut off. In the distance, Xianyuan Shao narrowed his eyes, killing intent in them. Xianyuan Qi turned to look at Yi Xian. Although she lost an arm, she didn't even frown. Xianyuan Qi looked at Yi Xian. "Your sister isn't in my hands." Yi Xian suddenly grinned. "Do you think I don't dare to kill you?" Xianyuan Qi was expressionless. "She really isn't in my hands." Yi Xian suddenly slashed down. Xianyuan Qi's other arm flew off, blood gushing out like a fountain. Not far away, Xianyuan Shao was about to attack, but at this time, Yi Xian pressed his sword against Xianyuan Qi's forehead. Xianyuan Shao immediately stopped, staring at Yi Xian. "Don't touch her." Yi Xian ignored Xin Yuanshao, looking at Xin Yuanqi. I want to see my sister. Xin Yuanqi looked at Yi Xian, not saying anything. At this moment Xin Yuanshao suddenly said, if she says she isn't in her hands, then she isn't. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, a smile that was really terrifying. At this moment Yi Xian was emitting a strange red light, and within this red light was endless hostility and killing intent. Seeing Yi Xian become more and more abnormal, Xin Yuanshao said in a low voice, I'll find her for you. Yi Xian looked at Xin Yuanshao and the latter looked at Xin Yuanqi. Where is she? Xin Yuanqi was silent for a moment, then said, when I came back the girl was taken away. Taken away? Xin Yuanshao frowned. Who? Xin Yuanqi shook her head. I don't know. Xin Yuanshao said in a low voice, tell me the truth. Xin Yuanqi shook her head. I really don't know. The person is at least in the Ascended Feng realm. Ascended Feng realm. Xin Yuanshao narrowed his eyes. Even in the black-yellow great world, this kind of expert was a top-notch expert. Xin Yuanshao was silent. At this moment he naturally knew that the Xin Yuan family had been tricked. Xin Yuanshao looked at Yi Xian. Someone is using you to go against my Xin Yuan family. Right at this moment, the sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly trembled violently. Yi Xian looked at Xin Yuanqi and his savage features were all twisted. You're telling me that she's not here now? As soon as he finished speaking he suddenly wrapped his left hand around Xin Yuanqi's neck, and the executing heaven sword in his right hand stabbed into Xin Yuanqi's stomach. This sword stabbed straight through Xin Yuanqi's stomach. Xin Yuanqi spat out a mouthful of blood. Nearby, Xin Yuanshao still hadn't acted. Because this attack from Yi Xian wasn't enough to make Xin Yuanqi disappear completely. Only by destroying Xin Yuanqi's soul would she be truly dead. Yi Xian looked at Xin Yuanqi. I won't kill you. Just watch. As soon as he finished speaking he suddenly turned to look at Xin Yuanshao. The latter's eyes narrowed slightly, and the pearl in his hand gradually trembled. Yi Xian's right hand suddenly disappeared. Xin Yuanzhao's pupils constricted. At this moment he sensed the aura of death. At this moment he understood why the old man in black had been killed in an instant. This attack was too terrifying. Xin Yuanshao suddenly stretched out his right hand, and the black pearl in his hand transformed into a ray of black light that engulfed Yi Xian's sword light. But in the next moment the ray of black light was shattered and so was the black pearl. The moment the black pearl shattered, Xin Yuanshao suddenly pressed his hands together, and a monstrous aura swept out from his body. In practically an instant the entire hall was reduced to powder. Sword arrival. Xin Yuanzhao's hands immediately closed around Yi Xian's sword. But in the next moment, bang! Xin Yuanzhao's physical body exploded. Not only that, but his soul was also sent flying hundreds of thousands of feet away. Everyone present was dumbstruck. Instantly killing Xin Yuanshao with a single attack? In the distance Xin Yuanshao glanced at himself. At this moment his body was visibly fading away. Xin Yuanshao was stunned and then he looked at Yi Xian. What sword technique was that? Yi Xian turned around and pointed his sword at Xin Yuanqi. Watch carefully. I'm going to wipe out your Xin Yuan family. As soon as he finished speaking he suddenly stomped his right foot. Bang! A ray of blood-red light instantly shot into the sky from within him, and in an instant the sky was completely blood-red. The power of bloodline. Chapter 703. Bloodline power. In fact, neither the earth energy nor the space Tao law were as powerful as bloodline power. After the bloodline power was activated, Yi Xian's strength increased tremendously. Moreover, the more he fought, the stronger he became, especially after he absorbed the blood energy in the surroundings. When they saw Yi Xian kill Xin Yuanshao with a single strike, the surrounding Xin Yuan family experts were filled with fear. That wasn't a victory, it was an instant kill. Killing Xin Yuanshao with a single strike. Only those who had reached the ascending Feng stage could do that. Yi Xian already had the combat strength of a Feng Deng expert. Xin Yuanqi, who was behind Yi Xian, was stunned when she saw Xin Yuanshao being killed. He was killed. Her father, who was only half a step away from the Feng Deng realm, was killed by Yi Xian? Xin Yuanqi's mind went blank. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly charged forward. Swish! Everywhere Yi Xian passed, a blood-red sword light was left behind. In the blink of an eye, the head of a Xin Yuan family expert who was tens of meters to the right of Yi Xian flew into the air. At the instant the head was sent flying, a sword suddenly pierced through an old man from the Xianyuan family not too far away from it. Swish, swish. In less than a few breaths of time 5 or 6 people had been killed. At this moment, a powerful aura suddenly flashed. In the distance Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated hundreds of meters. A man in golden armor stood where Yi Xian had been standing, and he held a spear in his hand. At this moment the spear was broken. In addition to the golden-armored man, 6 other experts who were also wearing golden armor had appeared around Yi Xian. 7 people. Yi Xian smiled savagely and in the next moment he suddenly disappeared. Across from Yi Xian the golden-armored man suddenly roared, "Break!" As soon as they finished speaking, the 7 of them attacked simultaneously. 7 rays of golden light instantly engulfed Yi Xian. Boom! Yi Xian was sent flying again and this time he was sent flying a full 3 kilometers back. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, a golden spear suddenly pierced through the air towards him. Yi Xian raised his hand and slashed. Bang! The golden spear exploded in an instant, but Yi Xian himself retreated nearly 100 zhang away. But before he could stop, another golden spear pierced through the air. Yi Xian wielded the executing heaven sword with both hands and slashed forward. Boom! The golden spear was instantly split into 2 by the executing heaven sword. But in the next moment, one of the golden spears suddenly pierced the body of the executing heaven sword in Yi Xian's hand. At the same time the other spear pierced Yi Xian's abdomen. Bang! The executing heaven sword shook violently, and Yi Xian retreated again. As soon as he stopped, a golden-armored man suddenly appeared in front of him, and at the same time, a spear suddenly pierced his chest. This spear was as fast as lightning. However, Yi Xian did not dodge and allowed the spear to pierce his chest. However, almost at the same time Yi Xian's sword cut the spear in half, and at the same time he stabbed forward. In an instant, the executing heaven sword pierced through the golden-armored man's abdomen. At this moment, several spears instantly engulfed Yi Xian. Boom! In the air Yi Xian retreated again and again. In front of him 6 golden-armored men surrounded him like a storm. The 6 of them cooperated well and did not give Yi Xian any chance to counterattack. At this moment Yi Xian was directly suppressed. However, many of the Xianyuan family's experts still had grave expressions on their faces. Qingqing Yi Family Ancestral Hall. Ancestor Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be removed, and Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders. Why? At this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look at the voice and they saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the corners of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you remove him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a family matter, what are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the great elder directly. However, she did not leave and instead mustered her courage to enter the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet the family is using a groundless excuse to remove him from his position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he is removed or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this moment the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder said coldly, "Then flog 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi family rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years and even now he is fighting for the family, but the family is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang, and he knew that his chance to show off had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince and it is everyone's wish. What are you shouting for?" As he said this he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up, but she did not cry and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, "What is your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded, "You are very good. After I become the crown prince I will need 10 guards and you will be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. "I will go through fire and water for the crown prince and I will do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall, so don't show any mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. Immediately he grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment Zhang Mu suddenly saw something and he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe and the robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. This person was Yi Xian who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed and he hurriedly looked at Yi Lang. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there and charged towards Zhang Mu once more. At this time Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, "Your man?" As he spoke he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face was instantly bloodied as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu who was crying for help. He walked up to Yi Ling. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage and in the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on Yi Xian's position as prince shall be removed, and Yi Lang shall take over. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the Yi clan elders. "Why?" At this time a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you remove him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look directly at the great elder. However, she did not leave, and instead mustered her courage to enter the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove him from the prince position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he is removed or not, It is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men drag her away. At this time the new prince Yilang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder replied coldly, then do it 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yilang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard laughed coldly. Young Master Yilang inherits the prince position and it is everyone's wish. What are you shouting about? As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yiling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard quickly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince. Yilang nodded. You are very good. After I become the prince I will need 10 guards. From now on you will be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death. Yilang nodded. Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. Immediately he grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to see something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe and the robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Zhou Xian who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes and his expression was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian his face changed. He quickly looked at Yilang and was about to speak, when Zhou Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yiling did not stop there and charged towards Zhang Mu once more. At this time Yilang suddenly roared, Zhou Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly. Zhou Xian looked up at him and snarled, your man? As he spoke he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian her tears flowed out. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Chapter 704. World Prison Tower. At the moment this tiny pagoda appeared, a shapeless pressure instantly appeared here, and this pressure was so strong that it caused the expressions of everyone in the surroundings to change, including the 2 powerhouses in the Ascending Seal realm in front of Zhou Xian. At this moment Shen Yuanqi suddenly raged, kill him. At this moment she panicked a little. That was because she sensed the aura of death. The moment Shen Yuanqi's words landed, the 2 half-a-step peak realm experts disappeared and were about to attack. At this moment Zhou Xian hollered in rage, imprison. The moment he said this, 2 red words, imprison, appeared above the heads of the 2 old men in front of Zhou Xian. The moment these 2 words appeared, the 2 old men stopped on the spot and couldn't move at all. At the same time, the 6 golden armored guards behind the 2 old men were also locked on the spot. The 8 of them were shocked. The 2 old men in the lead used all the Xianqi in their bodies, but they still couldn't move at all. Just at this moment Zhou Xian hollered in rage once more, retract. The moment he said this, the 8 of them disappeared. Pretty much at the same time, Zhou Xian's face turned ashen white, abnormally white. Not far away Shen Yuanqi was stunned. Gone. 2 half-a-step peak realm and 6 peak end realm experts were gone just like that. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly looked towards Ayu. Let's go. In the sky, Ayu, who was fighting with the two Xianyuan family experts, suddenly stopped. In the next moment, she directly returned to the World Prison Tower. Yi Xian turned around and disappeared. The faces of the Xianyuan family experts were ashen white. Gone. Yi Xian just insta-killed two half-a-step peak realm and 6 peak end realm experts? Not far away, Xianyuan Qi's face was ashen white. She didn't expect that Yi Xian could actually kill two half-a-step peak realm and 6 end realm experts alone. Those were the top experts of the Xianyuan family. Xianyuan Qi's heart was dripping blood. Of course, most of it was fear. This time she was truly terrified. To instantly reach Seal Realm and 6 End Realms, only a true Seal Realm expert could do that. In other words, the current Yi Xian, after using the pagoda, already had the strength of a Feng Meng stage expert. Playing with fire is asking for trouble. This time she really played with fire and burned herself. News of what Yi Xian had done in the Xianyuan family quickly spread throughout the Black-Yellow Great World. At this moment, the entire Xianhuang Great World was shocked. Xianhuang World within the Xianhuang Palace. The Lord of Mysterious Yellow stood at the entrance of the Mysterious Yellow Palace, holding a secret scroll in her hand. After a long while, the Mysterious Yellow Master said softly, "I never expected Yi Xian's strength to reach such a level." Beside the Master of Black Yellow, an elder said in a deep voice, "The Xianyuan family has suffered heavy losses this time." The Master of Black Yellow looked up at the sky and said softly, "It's still far from enough." With that said, the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. "It's just the beginning." Within the prison tower, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. In front of him was a pile of essence crystals. Apart from essence crystals, he also swallowed a few healing pills. At this moment, his body was recovering at a really quick rate. In front of him there were 8 corpses. 2 half-a-step Feng Meng and 6 peak end realms. After entering the prison tower, the 8 of them were killed right away. However, he paid a price, which was that Xiao Ta was in deep sleep. In a short period of time, he wouldn't be able to activate the prison tower. In front of Yi Xian were Yanjia and Ahu. Ahu looked at Yi Xian and said solemnly, "This matter isn't over yet." Yanjia nodded. "This is probably just the beginning." Ahu sighed. "This fellow cares too much about his sister." Yanjia looked at Ahu. "What plan do you have?" Ahu shook his head. "No one can persuade him." Yanjia kept silent. Could anyone stop Yi Xian, who had gone mad? Yes. Yiling. However, Yiling was taken away. Just at that moment, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. He looked at the 8 corpses on the ground and waved his right hand. A large pile of materials appeared in front of him. Refined demon corpses. He knew how to refine them. The reason why he let the Demon Lord refine them was because the Demon Lord was stronger than him. Now that the Demon Lord was asleep, he could only do it himself. Ahu looked at Yi Xian and then said, "Xianyuan family is stronger than you think." Yi Xian kept silent. Ahu said, "Fighting head-on isn't the best plan." Yi Xian kept silent. Ahu looked at Yanjia and Yanjia shook his head. It was useless to say anything now. Ahu sighed. As long as it involved Yiling, Yi Xian would become a different person. Around 6 hours later, Yi Xian was about to leave the pagoda when Xiaoling suddenly appeared in front of him. "Do you want to fight?" Yi Xian rubbed Xiaoling's head. "Be good." As soon as he finished speaking, he left the pagoda. There were 8 devil corpses standing at the entrance to the first level. They weren't as strong as the corpses themselves, but they weren't weak either. They possessed at least 80% of the corpses' strength. Moreover, the bodies of these corpses had been greatly strengthened after being refined using a secret technique of the devil race. So, their combat strength was extremely terrifying. Within the pagoda, Xiaoling fell silent as she watched Yi Xian leave. After a long time, she suddenly clenched her fists and grunted, "How dare you bully my people?" Ayu and Yanjia were speechless. Xiaoling suddenly turned around and left. It didn't take long for her to arrive before a spirit tree. There were 2 boxes beneath the spirit tree. Xiaoling squatted before the boxes and muttered, "Fight. Black is this box. What is it? Is it powerful?" Okay. On the first level, Yanjia looked at the top of the tower and said softly, "What is that little girl underestimating?" Ahu shook her head. "That little girl has a backer as well." Yanjia looked at Ahu and the latter said solemnly, "And she's very powerful." Even now she still remembered the white little fellow that had come out. That little fellow's combat strength wasn't very high, but all the spirits in the world feared her. Moreover, she could control spirit energy, which was the most lethal aspect. Spirit energy was the foundation of a martial artist, and that little fellow controlled it. Most importantly, that little fellow was on the same side as the green-clothed man. The green-clothed man. Ahu shook her head and collected her thoughts. She looked at Yanjia. I'll go and understand this world. Yanjia looked at Ahu, and Ahu said softly, this is the strongest world in the four-dimensional world. It's not simple. That fellow is no longer normal. He doesn't care if it's dangerous or not. I'll go and understand. After saying that, she disappeared. Xianyuan world. At this moment, Xianyuan world was on guard like never before. After Yi Xian left, the Xianyuan family immediately called back the experts of the Xianyuan family who were outside. In Xianyuan world, a huge light screen suddenly appeared in the sky. This light screen enveloped the entire Xianyuan world, and there were all sorts of golden talismans on this light screen. Inside Xianyuan palace. At this moment, many experts of the Xianyuan family had gathered in the palace. The leader was a supreme elder of the Xianyuan family. His name was Xianyuan Feng, and he was a famous super expert in the past. Xianyuan Feng was thin and his face was yellowish. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. Not far from the supreme elder was Xianyuan Qi. At this moment, Xianyuan Qi's arms had recovered. At this moment, an old man suddenly said, we should severely punish Xianyuan Qi for this matter. As he said that, he looked at Xianyuan Qi. If she hadn't made a mistake, how could our Xianyuan family have lost so many experts? Not only that, but we also lost Yi Xian's younger sister, so we can't suppress Yi Xian. And now Yi Xian is targeting our Xianyuan family like a madman. We are fighting with Yi Xian, but we are constantly being exhausted by Yi Xian. Who benefits? Is it our Xianyuan family? Xianyuan Qi was silent. The old man said again, until now we still don't know who is behind all this. Now that our Xianyuan family has suffered heavy losses and is in such a situation, Xianyuan Qi can't absolve herself from the blame. Xianyuan Feng suddenly looked at the old man who spoke. Now what we should care about is not who is at fault, but how to deal with Yi Xian. As he said that, he glanced at the crowd. Since our ancestors established the Xianyuan family, we have never been humiliated like this. Now the whole black-yellow great world is looking at us as a joke. If we don't avenge this humiliation, we will never be able to raise our heads in the black-yellow great world. In front of Xianyuan Feng, the old man said in a low voice, we have been used. Xianyuan Feng said coldly, that's not the point. The point is that the treasure is still in Yi Xian's hands. The point is that Yi Xian has killed more than 10 people of our Xianyuan family. The point is that Yi Xian has brought shame to our Xianyuan family. As he said that, he looked at Xianyuan Qi. Pass down my order. Find Yi Xian at all costs. If we can't find him, our Xianyuan family will go to the northern region. The old man would like to see whether Yi Xian will come out or not. As he said that, he suddenly looked at the door of Xianyuan Palace. Almost at the same time, everyone turned around and looked at the door of the hall. A man was standing there. Yi Xian. When they saw Yi Xian, everyone was stunned. Did Yi Xian come by himself? Seeing Yi Xian, Xianyuan Feng narrowed his eyes and slowly clenched his right hand. Yi Xian looked at Xianyuan Feng. Are you looking for me? Xianyuan Feng was about to speak, but Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. A wisp of sword light flashed in the field. Immeasurable sword. When they saw this sword technique again, everyone's expression changed greatly. This sword technique had killed Xianyuan Shao in a split second. Xianyuan Feng's expression changed at this moment, and he was extremely shocked in his heart. He didn't dare to think any further and suddenly charged forward. A powerful wave of fire appeared in the hall, and in an instant, the entire hall was turned into ashes. Sword arrived. A tearing sound resounded in the field. After a breath, the field returned to normal. Yi Xian was already standing behind Xianyuan Feng. At this moment, blood was flowing from between Xianyuan Feng's eyebrows. Another instant kill. All the experts of the Xianyuan family were shocked and retreated rapidly. Xianyuan Qi stood where she was. She looked at Yi Xian without moving. Yi Xian walked in front of Xianyuan Qi. He suddenly held the back of Xianyuan Qi's neck with his left hand and stabbed forward with his sword with his right hand. Chapter 705. Yi Xian's sword pierced through Xianxia's abdomen. Xianxia looked at Yi Xian, her beautiful face expressionless. Yi Xian grinned. I won't kill you. I want you to watch. I want the Xianxia family to die. Is that so? At this moment, a voice came from behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian turned around and saw a middle-aged man standing not far from him. The middle-aged man wore a white robe with cloud-patterned sleeves and a jade pendant hanging from his waist. He walked over slowly from afar with a hint of elegance in his composure. The Xianxia family's experts bowed respectfully when they saw the middle-aged man. Xianxia Wu. Xianxia Wu wasn't the Xianxia family's leader, but he was a martial master of the Xianxia family. Martial master. This was a sacred profession in the Xianxia family. Any disciple of the Xianxia family would be sent to the martial hall to learn martial arts. The leader of the martial hall was Xianxia Wu. Could be said that Xianxia Wu was the master of everyone in the Xianxia family. What was worth mentioning was that Xianxia Wu was a Feng Ascension expert. A true Feng Ascension expert. Xianxia Wu sized up Yi Xian and said softly, "You're pretty good at sword Dao. With the help of external objects, your combat strength is extraordinary." Yi Xian chuckled. "You're finally out of the Feng Ascension?" Xianxia Wu looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Most of us are outside, including the clan leader. If it wasn't for the incident in the family, I don't know how long it would take for me to return." He glanced at Xianxia. "Men should solve their problems in a man's way. What do you think?" Yi Xian grinned. "The Xianxia family's way of talking to me about men?" He suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. Xianxia's entire right arm was sent flying. Xianxia Wu was expressionless. Yi Xian's smile gradually became savage. "I want to ask you something. That treasure is in my possession, so your Xianxia clan can act against me. Why did you act against my younger sister? And now you're talking to me about using a man's way? Are you a man of the Xianxia family?" Xianxia Wu looked at Xianxia, who said in a low voice, "That little girl is no longer in my hands." Xianxia Wu asked, "Who has it?" Xianxia said, "I don't know, I only know that he is at ascended Feng state." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian and said, "You should look for that person." Yi Xian suddenly raised his hand and slapped him. Xianxia's entire right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. Nearby, Xianxia Wu frowned slightly. "This is too much." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack. However, right at this moment, an illusory Xiaota suddenly appeared between Yi Xian's brows. Prison Pagoda. All the experts of the Xianxia clan were astounded when they saw this illusory Xiaota, and they retreated explosively in succession. Xianxia Wu's expression changed slightly. He sensed a dangerous aura. Yi Xian ignored Xianxia Wu and looked at Xianxia in front of him. "If I were you, I'd kill myself because it'll be a more comfortable death." Xianxia looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned. "Look at how many people of the Xianxia family died because of your actions. However, I can tell you responsibly that this is only the beginning. As long as I, Yi Xian, am alive, I'll continue killing." Xianxia looked at Yi Xian. "What's the point of fighting to the death with the Xianxia family here?" Yi Xian suddenly roared angrily, "The crazier I kill, the safer my sister will be. Do you know that?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly kicked Xianxia's abdomen with his knee. Bang! Xianxia was sent flying and eventually landed heavily on the ground. As soon as she landed, Xianxia spat out several mouthfuls of blood. Not only that, but her insides had already been ruptured by Yi Xian. Xianxia wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and looked at the crazed Yi Xian in the distance. At this moment, she suddenly recalled Jiang Jiu's words in the northern region. "You can touch him, but don't touch his sister. This guy will really go crazy." If the Xianxia family had Yiling, they would definitely be able to threaten Yi Xian. However, the problem was that the Xianxia family didn't have Yiling. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. She had schemed against people all her life, and this time she was schemed against. Apart from his own anger, the reason why Yi Xian targeted the Xianxia family was because he wanted to protect his sister. What was the purpose of the mastermind taking Yiling away? Naturally, they hoped that Yi Xian would target the Xianxia family. The more Yi Xian targeted the Xianxia family, the more valuable Yiling would be. The more valuable Yiling was, the higher her chances of survival would be. If Yi Xian stopped targeting the Xianyuan family, Yiling would most likely be dealt with in secret because the mastermind might be afraid of bringing trouble upon himself. As long as he kept targeting the Xianyuan family, the mastermind would feel that Yiling was valuable and wouldn't kill her. Of course, there was another reason. Yi Xian really hated the Xianyuan family. Yi Xian turned to look at Xianyuan Wu. The illusory Xiao Ta between his brows was particularly eye-catching. Yi Xian said, "Do you want to test the power of this tower?" Xianyuan Wu smiled. "Are you threatening me?" Yi Xian said softly, "I believe the Xianyuan family will suffer a great loss if I kill you, right?" Xianyuan Wu narrowed his eyes. "You're very confident." Yi Xian walked toward Xianyuan Wu. The latter narrowed his eyes and clenched his right fist. The Xianyuan family's powerhouses retreated one after another. At this moment, the illusory Xiao Ta suddenly appeared above Yi Xian's head, and an invisible pressure appeared in the surroundings. Xianyuan Wu's eyes were filled with caution. With regards to this fifth-dimensional treasure, he naturally did not dare to underestimate it in the slightest. Not long ago, Yi Xian had used this tower to kill 8 powerhouses from the Xianyuan family. 2 of them were half a step into the sealed realm. Even he couldn't kill all 8 of them in an instant. However, Yi Xian did it. Yi Xian looked at Xianyuan Wu. "Do it." Xianyuan Wu asked, "Why don't you do it?" Yi Xian smiled. "You're in the sealed realm, so you should make the first move." Xianyuan Wu was expressionless. "If I'm not mistaken, you'll suffer a huge backlash if you use this treasure, right?" Yi Xian said calmly, "I've already used it once, but I'm fine now." Xianyuan Wu looked at Yi Xian and clenched his right fist, which contained an extremely powerful force. However, he still didn't dare to make a move. A fifth-dimensional treasure. He naturally knew about this treasure which came from the 5th dimension from Daoist. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked into the distance. Xianyuan Wu narrowed his eyes. When Yi Xian was 30 meters away, he stopped and looked at Xianyuan Wu. "If you're not going to make a move, I'll leave." Xianyuan Wu looked at Yi Xian and was about to make a move when a blood-red prisoner word suddenly appeared above his head. Xianyuan Wu's expression changed drastically, and he was about to make a move when the blood-red prisoner word suddenly disappeared. Xianyuan Wu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian laughed. "Xianyuan family, as long as my sister doesn't show up, I'll slaughter every member of the Xianyuan family until you're all dead." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned into a sword radiance and disappeared into the horizon. No one dared to stop him. They were all afraid of Yi Xian's tower. Apart from the tower, Yi Xian's sword technique was also very terrifying. Below, Xianyuan Wu frowned and his expression was extremely gloomy. After a long time, Xianyuan Wu suddenly asked, "Have you informed the clan leader?" Not far away, a Xianyuan family expert said in a deep voice, "Yes." Xianyuan Wu nodded and looked at Xianyuan Qi, who was not far away. Xianyuan Qi was in an extremely sorry state. Xianyuan Qi's expression was gloomy, and no one knew what she was thinking. Xianyuan Wu walked up to Xianyuan Qi. "Who do you think took his sister away?" Xianyuan Qi fell silent for a moment before saying, "The Wu clan or the Dao sect?" "The Wu clan." Xianyuan Wu said softly, "The Wu clan has a lot of grudges with our Xianyuan family. It's possible that the Dao sect?" Xianyuan Qi said in a deep voice, "According to my investigation, the Dao sect had contact with Yi Xian before, and there seemed to be a conflict between them. This time if they took Yiling away, it might be because of the treasure on Yi Xian." Xianyuan Wu fell silent. Xianyuan Qi continued, "Apart from them, there's another force." Xianyuan Wu looked at Xianyuan Qi, who said in a deep voice, "The Lord of Heaven and Earth." Xianyuan Wu frowned. Xianyuan Qi said in a deep voice, "It's only a possibility. The more chaotic the heaven and earth great world is, the more advantageous it is for her. Of course, this is only my guess. After all, the heaven and earth great world isn't that powerful right now." Xianyuan Wu fell silent for a moment before saying, "Get our men to investigate." "No, get Skynet to investigate." Skynet. It was the largest intelligence organization in the heaven and earth great world, and it was as mysterious as the Dao sect. Xianyuan Qi said in a deep voice, "What about Yi Xian?" Xianyuan Wu shook his head. "If we can't find out who took his sister away, he'll fight us to the death. If this goes on, the Xianyuan family will suffer the most." Moreover, it's very likely that he'll target us at a critical moment. Xianxia said softly, Master Wu, I'm sorry. It's my mistake that led to this. Xianxia Wu looked at Xianxia. Your mistake will be dealt with by the clan leader in the future. He turned and left after saying that. Xianxia remained silent. She didn't regret targeting Yi Xian, because she and Yi Xian were enemies to begin with. What she regretted was that she shouldn't have targeted Yi Xian's sister, Yi Ling. Her actions this time had brought about too great of a loss to the Xianyuan family. Moreover, the losses might continue to increase. After a long time, Xianxia turned and left. What she and the Xianyuan family needed to do now was to find out where Yi Ling was. Otherwise, the Xianyuan family would never have peace. All she wanted now was for Yi Ling to be alive. Otherwise, no matter who killed Yi Ling, Yi Xian would definitely take revenge on the Xianyuan family. Sword Martial School. On this day, a black-robed man suddenly appeared at the entrance of the Sword Martial School. The black-robed man waved his right hand and a little girl landed in front of the Sword Martial School's entrance. After putting the little girl down, the man in black turned and disappeared. As soon as the man in black disappeared, a middle-aged man and an old man appeared in front of the little girl. They looked at each other and the middle-aged man said in a deep voice, This is Yi Xian's sister, Yi Ling. Yi Ling. The old man narrowed his eyes. Someone is trying to frame the Sword Martial School. The middle-aged man didn't say anything. The old man looked at the middle-aged man. Should we inform Yi Xian? The middle-aged man smirked. Inform Yi Xian that his sister is in the hands of the Sword Martial School. Ask him to exchange that treasure and the holy sword of the Sword Martial School for her. P.S. I don't have any. I've been to an event a few days ago and couldn't write, so I didn't save any chapters. I didn't post much today, so please forgive me. If you have a monthly ticket, please give it to me. Chapter 706. When he heard this, the old man said solemnly, That isn't appropriate. The middle-aged man looked at the old man. Elder Gu Jing, what isn't appropriate? The old man called Gu Jing shook his head. Yi Ling's appearance here obviously means that someone wants to harm our Sword Martial School. Yi Xian used his own strength to cause chaos in the Xianyuan family. Not only that, but the Xianyuan family has lost over 20 Peak End realms and 3 half-a-step seal realms. If we use Yi Ling to threaten Yi Xian, then Yi Xian's next target will be our Sword Martial School. Even the Xianyuan family can't do anything to him, so even if we take him down, we will suffer heavy losses. As he spoke, he looked at the middle-aged man. Even if we take 10,000 steps back, even if our Sword Martial sect obtains that supreme treasure, can we really defend it? The middle-aged man fell silent. Gu Jing continued, There are many in the Shenhuang Great World who are after Yi Xian's treasure. Once we obtain it, we will definitely become the target of all the other powers. When he said this, he looked at Yi Ling and said softly, The person who sent her here is so vicious. The middle-aged man suddenly said, I understand everything Elder Gu Jing said. However, Yi Ling is also an opportunity for our Sword Martial sect, isn't it? Gu Jing fell silent. The middle-aged man said, Yi Xian cares too much about his sister. If we use her as a hostage, then he will definitely hand over the treasure. Gu Jing looked at the middle-aged man. Xianxia, have you thought about what to do next? The middle-aged man called Xianxia smiled. Next, we will have to face Yi Xian's revenge and many other powers in the Shenhuang Great World. When he said this, he asked, Does Elder Gu Jing want to obtain that treasure without paying any price? Gu Jing fell silent for a moment before he said, Actually, our Sword Martial School shouldn't want it. Xianxia asked, Then what about our Saint Sword? Saint Sword. Hearing this, Gu Jing's expression changed slightly. The executing heaven sword in Yi Xian's hand was the sword of the founder of the Sword Martial School. In other words, it belonged to the Sword Martial School. Xianxia said softly, Why is Yi Xian so strong? Because he has the holy sword of my Sword Martial sect. With that holy sword, ordinary people wouldn't be a match for his sword. And this Yi Xian, will he return the sword to my Sword Martial School? That was impossible. Furthermore, he killed several people from our Sword Martial sect and even annihilated our Sword Martial sect's subsidiary force, the Prairie Blaze sect. We've long since become mortal enemies with him. Right now, someone wants to use his younger sister to harm our Sword Martial School. Why don't we beat him at his own game and use his younger sister to take back the Saint's sword and the treasure? The ancient mirror fell silent for a moment before it said, Sect Master, please decide. As soon as they finished speaking, the two of them turned around at the same time and saw a middle-aged man standing not far away from them. The middle-aged man had his hands behind his back and a sword hanging from his waist. He was looking at Yiling. He was the sect master of the sword martial sect, Xianxia. A long time passed before Xianxia suddenly said, "Send the order for Zhou Xian to return to my sword martial sect with the saint's sword and the treasure. Ask him to bury his younger sister's corpse in 3 days." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished on the spot. Yiling had vanished along with him. The ancient mirror sighed softly. Xianxia spoke softly, "Don't think too much about it. The founding ancestor sent a clone to look for Zhou Xian that day, and it was a clear display of her attitude." The ancient mirror frowned slightly. Why didn't the founding ancestor kill him? Xianxia chuckled. Who knows? The ancient mirror shook his head. I keep having the feeling that there's something fishy about this. Why would Zhou Xian alarm the founding ancestor's clone? Xianxia said, "Don't think too much about it. The important matter at hand is how to deal with Zhou Xian." The ancient mirror fell silent for a moment before he nodded. "Let's go." The two of them left. Xianyuan world. At this moment, members of the Xianyuan clan were dying incessantly within the Xianyuan world. It was naturally Zhou Xian who was killing them. Zhou Xian had specifically chosen experts at the god rank realm, and such experts were practically powerless to fight back before him. Every single moment, someone from the Xianyuan clan was dying. However, Zhou Xian just refused to show himself. A woman suddenly rushed out of a large hall. This woman was Xianyuan Qi. Xianyuan Qi glanced at the surroundings and said, "Zhou Xian, I've located your younger sister." As soon as she finished speaking, Zhou Xian appeared in front of her. Moreover, a bloody head was held in Zhou Xian's right hand. Xianyuan Qi gazed at Zhou Xian and said, "Your younger sister is in the hands of the sword martial school. They want you to go to the sword martial school and exchange the sword in your hand for her. If you don't go in 3 days." Her voice stopped abruptly when she spoke up to hear. Because Zhou Xian had vanished. When Xianyuan Qi saw that Zhou Xian had disappeared, she immediately heaved a sigh of relief. This malefic star had finally left. It wasn't that Zhou Xian could fight against the entire Xianyuan clan by himself, because with Zhou Xian's current strength he still couldn't fight against Ascended Seal Realm experts. No, in fact, a half-step Ascended Seal Realm expert could kill Zhou Xian. But the problem was that Zhou Xian had that fifth-dimensional treasure in his hand. With this fifth-dimensional treasure, even Ascended Seal Realm experts wouldn't dare to easily attack him. Especially since Zhou Xian was extremely good at concealing himself. At this moment she realized that Zhou Xian wasn't as easy to deal with as she had imagined. Moreover, that woman in the plain dress hadn't appeared yet. If she appeared along with Zhou Xian, just to deal with that woman in the plain dress, the Xianyuan clan would probably have to use up everything they had. Moreover, that woman in the plain dress was at least in the Ascended Seal realm, and she might even be a half-step unknown realm expert. She was too difficult to deal with. However, would the Xianyuan clan give up? That treasure could allow them to enter the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension. The clan leader wouldn't give up, and neither would the real old monsters of the Xianyuan clan. It wasn't over yet. At this moment, Xianyuan Wu appeared next to Xianyuan Qi. He looked in the direction that Zhou Xian had left in and asked, "Was it the sword martial school that kidnapped Yiling?" Xianyuan Qi said in a low voice, "I don't know, but it could be them." Xianyuan Wu narrowed his eyes. "Our Xianyuan clan has no enmity with them, so why would they want to harm us?" Xianyuan Qi said, "Maybe they want to use us to weaken Zhou Xian, or force Zhou Xian to use his trump card so that they can deal with it." At this point she narrowed her eyes. "I finally understand why they didn't do anything after Zhou Xian came to the Black-Yellow Great World. They're waiting for someone to make the first move, and then they'll force Zhou Xian to use his trump card." At this point she laughed self-deprecatingly. "I've always thought that my intelligence is unparalleled. Ridiculous. Ridiculous." Xianyuan Wu looked at Xianyuan Qi. "It's not a bad thing to fail once." Xianyuan Qi nodded. "Let's go and have a look at the sword martial school. I want to see how the sword martial school is going to deal with Zhou Xian. I also want to see if Zhou Xian will really hand over the 2 supreme treasures for his sister." After saying this, she disappeared on the spot. Xianyuan Wu also disappeared. Apart from the Xianyuan clan, many experts from the Black-Yellow Great World had already rushed to the sword martial world. In the black-yellow palace of the black-yellow world. The black-yellow lord stood at the entrance of the palace. Her lips curled into a smile. Do you think he'll really hand over the 2 supreme treasures for his sister? The old man next to the black-yellow lord shook his head. The reason why he's so powerful is because of those 2 supreme treasures. If he hands them over, even a half-step seal ascension expert can kill him, let alone a seal ascension expert. At this point he said in a low voice, handing over the 2 supreme treasures is equivalent to courting death. The black-yellow lord smiled. Then let's wait and see. The old man looked at the black-yellow lord. Your Majesty, do you think he'll hand them over? The black-yellow lord smiled. That's not the point. The point is what's going to happen next. As she spoke, she looked up at the horizon and said softly, it's getting more and more interesting. The old man looked at the horizon with a hint of worry in his eyes. Sword Martial World. The Sword Martial School could be said to be one of the oldest forces in the black-yellow Great World. Rumor had it that the founding ancestor of the Sword Martial School was skilled in both sword and martial arts. He was invincible in the black-yellow Great World. He was truly invincible. That era was the era of the Sword Martial School. However, ever since the founding ancestor of the Sword Martial School disappeared, such a figure had never appeared in the Sword Martial School again. Nevertheless, the Sword Martial School had lived up to expectations and had produced 2 unknown realm experts. Although the current Sword Martial School could not be compared to its peak, no one dared to underestimate them. After all, their foundation was there. Sword Martial World. On this day, a sword chime suddenly resounded in the sky above the Sword Martial School. Along with this sword chime, Zhou Xian appeared in the sky above the Sword Martial School. The moment he appeared, the Sword Martial School sect leader, Xianxia, appeared in front of him. Behind Xianxia was Zhongqi and Gu Jing. Apart from them, there were dozens of Sword Martial School experts. There were 3 half a step into the Seal Realm and the rest were End Realm experts. One could say that they were the top experts of the Sword Martial School. Xianxia glanced at Zhou Xian. Did you bring the item? Zhou Xian was expressionless. I want to see her. Xianxia looked at Zhou Xian. You don't have the right to bargain. Zhou Xian turned around and left. Xianxia squinted his eyes. At this moment Zhou Xian suddenly said, I will give that treasure to the Xianyuan family. Your Sword Martial School can ask for it from them. Right at this moment Zhou Xian suddenly stopped. He turned around and saw a little girl lying beside Xianxia. It was Yiling. Yiling's eyes were closed like she was in a deep sleep. Xianxia looked at Zhou Xian. The item. Zhou Xian opened his palm and the prism pagoda appeared in his hand. He looked at Xianxia. Hand her to me. Xianxia reached out with his right hand. Give her to me first. Zhou Xian didn't say anything. Xianxia looked at Zhou Xian. I will keep my word. Zhou Xian pointed and the prism pagoda flew in front of Xianxia. Xianxia waved his right hand and Yiling appeared in front of Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's hand trembled. He carried Yiling and left. At this moment Xianxia suddenly said, You can't leave. The moment he said this he appeared in front of Zhou Xian. He looked at Zhou Xian. If you don't die, how can I be at ease? Zhou Xian kept silent. Chapter 707. Zhou Xian stood on the spot with Yiling in his arms and he didn't move. On the other hand, Xianxia stared fixedly at Zhou Xian. He was a veteran expert of the Xuanhuan world and he was an extraordinary expert. The Ascension Realm. He was an extraordinary expert in the Sky-Earth world. However, even he was fearful of Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's potential was too great. If he was allowed to grow, then he would definitely bring calamity to the Sword Martial sect. Especially now that the Sword Martial sect had become mortal enemies with Zhou Xian. If he didn't eliminate Zhou Xian now, then even he wouldn't be confident in his ability to kill Zhou Xian in the near future. Zhou Xian must die. Xianxia gazed at Zhou Xian. His expression was calm, but he was slightly vigilant in his heart. He didn't dare underestimate this mysterious young man at all. He knew what happened to the Xianyuan clan. The sword aura Xianxia emanated grew stronger and stronger, and it even caused the space in the surroundings to warp and warp. Zhou Xian suddenly said, Miss Yanjia. He just finished speaking when Yanjia appeared in front of him. Zhou Xian passed Yiling to Yanjia. Take her away. Yanjia glanced at Zhou Xian and nodded. She took Yiling and was about to leave when an expert of the Sword Martial sect obstructed her path. Zhou Xian gazed at Xianxia. I'm the one all of you want to kill. Li Xinghe shook his head. Pull up the weeds by the roots. Pull up the weeds by the roots. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. A ray of sword light flashed through the battlefield. It was so swift that it instantly caused Yanjia's expression to change drastically. At the instant that Li Xinghe attacked, Yi Xian suddenly charged forward, and then the executing heaven sword slashed forward. The executing heaven sword. He hadn't given it to Li Xinghe earlier, and Li Xinghe probably didn't want it because of the pagoda of grand desire. Yi Xian's sword slashed directly against the ray of light. Bang! The sword light shook violently, but it did not explode. On the contrary, Yi Xian was sent flying thousands of feet away. In the process of retreating, his body started to crack inch by inch. When he stopped, his body had already cracked into a spider web pattern. Li Xinghe hadn't held back at all. Li Xinghe glanced at the sword in his hand. At this moment, numerous cracks had appeared on the sword. After a moment of silence, Li Xinghe looked at the executing heaven sword in Yi Xian's hand and said in a low voice, "No wonder it's the founder's sacred sword." As he spoke, he frowned. "How did this sword fall into your hands?" How Xinghe was. Yi Xian's Xinghe couldn't even fight against Yi Xinghe. He didn't feel that he was weak this time. After all, Li Xinghe was someone who had cultivated for thousands or even 10,000 years. He didn't feel that he was weak this time. After all, Li Xinghe was someone who had cultivated for thousands or even 10,000 years. He'd relied on those two precious treasures to kill Yi Xinghe, and that was already very heaven-defying. Li Xinghe gazed at Yi Xian. He didn't speak, and the sword in his hand suddenly started trembling. Boom! A sharp howl of the sword reverberated through the sky. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at Li Xinghe, this senior expert of Sky-Earth world. If Yi Xian was able to instantly kill Li Xinghe with a single strike, then it wouldn't be heaven-defying, it would be abnormal. The aura of the sword emanating from Li Xinghe grew stronger and stronger, and the space in the surroundings started to ripple. Yi Xian gazed at Li Xinghe in silence. He couldn't defeat Li Xinghe. He was very well aware of his current strength, and he wouldn't be able to defeat Li Xinghe even if he utilized the executing heaven sword and the infinite sword. It wasn't that the executing heaven sword and the infinite sword were weak, but the difference in cultivation was too great. Even though the infinite sword could disregard cultivation, it didn't mean that it was invincible. Of course, he still had to fight even if he couldn't defeat Li Xinghe. Yi Xian tightened his grip on his sword, and the executing heaven sword trembled violently. Li Xinghe gazed at Yi Xian and was about to attack. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly gazed at Yanjia. Is she all right? Yanjia naturally knew who Yi Xian was talking about. She gazed at Yi Ling and then she shook her head a short while later. She's just fallen into a deep slumber. She's fine. Yi Xian nodded slightly and then he gazed at Li Xinghe. Let's have a chat? Li Xinghe was slightly stunned and so was everyone else here. Talk about what? Li Xinghe gazed at Yi Xian. What do you want to talk about? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I'll let all of you go if you let me and my younger sister go. All of them were speechless. Li Xinghe gazed at Yi Xian. Are you joking with me? Yi Xian gazed at Li Xinghe. Do you really think that I only have the fifth-dimensional treasure as my trump card? Li Xinghe's eyes narrowed slightly. He naturally didn't believe that Yi Xian only had the fifth-dimensional treasure as his trump card. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so fearful of Yi Xian. Fearful. He was fearful of Yi Xian. Yi Xian had brought a fifth-dimensional treasure with him all the way here, and that was already slightly heaven-defying. Moreover, who didn't know that Yi Xian had an extraordinary swordsman behind him? The woman in a plain dress. Who in the black-yellow great world wouldn't be fearful of her? She'd instantly annihilated the king of the northern region with a single strike of her sword and all the experts above the emperor realm in the north with a single strike of her sword. No one wouldn't be fearful of such strength. Even Li Xinghe was incomparably fearful of the woman in a plain dress. If not for the fact that the fifth-dimensional treasure and the sacred sword were too important to him, he wouldn't be willing to make an enemy out of such an expert. Retracting his thoughts, Li Xinghe looked at Yi Xian. If you have any trump cards, feel free to show them. Yi Xian looked at Li Xinghe. Are you sure? Li Xinghe stared at Yi Xian. I'm sure. As soon as he finished speaking, he gently twisted his wrist and pointed his long sword diagonally to the ground. A wisp of sword light flickered on the tip of the sword. Yi Xian suddenly said, Brother Emperor Dog, it's time for you to make your appearance. Hearing this, Li Xinghe frowned slightly and tightened his grip on the sword in his right hand. However, there was no reaction from the surroundings. Li Xinghe looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Brother Emperor Dog, it's time for you to come out." The surroundings were incomparably silent. There was still no reaction. Yi Xian's face sank. "Don't toy with me." Meanwhile, Li Xinghe suddenly said, "Yi Xian, are you joking with me?" As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. The sound of something tearing resounded. Yi Xian was just about to attack when a colossus suddenly appeared in front of him. The Emperor Dog. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw the Emperor Dog. At this moment, the Emperor Dog was completely different from before. Not only was it almost 2 times larger than before, it even emanated a strand of violet light. Of course, the most important factor was its aura. At this moment, the Emperor Dog's aura was countless times stronger than before. As soon as the Emperor Dog appeared, it leaped up and slammed against Li Xinghe. Bang! This collision caused the space where Li Xinghe and the Emperor Dog resided to collapse. At the same time, Li Xinghe was pushed over 1 kilometer back while the Emperor Dog was pushed almost 300 m back as well. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly when he witnessed this scene. That Emperor Dog has actually become so strong? That white little fellow's violet energy was so formidable? At this moment, Yi Xian was slightly regretful. He regretted that he didn't get more violet energy from that little fellow. The Emperor Dog had a ferocious expression on its face as it stood before Yi Xian, and it emanated a ferocious aura. All the experts in the surroundings had extremely solemn expressions on their faces. Li Xinghe gazed at the Emperor Dog and spoke softly, "A ferocious beast." As soon as he finished speaking, he shook his wrist. In an instant, an expanse of light surged out and instantly enveloped the Emperor Dog. The space where the Emperor Dog resided was instantly torn apart inch by inch. Yi Xian was just about to attack when a strand of formidable aura suddenly erupted from within the expanse of light. In the next moment, the light dispersed, but right at this moment, a strand of light slashed against the Emperor Dog. Bang! The Emperor Dog was instantly pushed 300 m back and its body was covered in scars. "It can break through my defenses." Yi Xian's face fell. Not far away, the Emperor Dog turned to look at Yi Xian and said angrily, "You son of a b***, this daddy found me such an opponent as soon as I came out of seclusion. Can you stop screwing me over?" Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Li Xinghe suddenly disappeared, but this time his target was Yi Xian. Clearly he still wanted to kill Yi Xian directly. At this moment, the Emperor Dog suddenly stood in front of Yi Xian and slapped at Yi Xian. This slap caused the space in front of it to collapse. Rumble. Li Xinghe was pushed back again, but the Emperor Dog didn't have it easy either. Cracks appeared all over its body. Li Xinghe's sword could break through its defenses. If it were any other Ascension Seal Realm expert, they might not be able to break through the Emperor Dog's defenses. However, Li Xinghe was different. This was a swordsman and a top-notch swordsman at that. In front of Yi Xian, the Emperor Dog said solemnly, "Kid, think of a way." Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment, Li Xinghe suddenly looked around and said softly, "Yi Xian, isn't that plain-dressed woman behind you going to come out yet?" Yi Xian looked at Li Xinghe. "You can look for her like the Northern Region King did. Look for the plain-dressed woman." Li Xinghe looked at Yi Xian. "Do you think I'm stupid? If the plain-dressed woman appeared, he would naturally have other methods to deal with her. If she didn't appear, that would naturally be the best. Look for her himself? Was there something wrong with his head?" Li Xinghe opened his palm and a sword appeared in it. He looked at Yi Xian and the sword in his hand spun rapidly. Soon sword hums rang out in the surroundings. Li Xinghe looked at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, I've always heard that you have many backers. Call one of them out." In front of Yi Xian, the Emperor Dog hurriedly said, "Kid, call." Yi Xian fell silent for a moment and then he said, "Xiaolinger, it's your turn to perform." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiaolinger instantly appeared in front of him. After Xiaolinger appeared, she looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Are you confident?" Xiaolinger blinked and then she carefully took out a box. A box. The Emperor Dog's eyelids twitched when it saw this box. That day Xiaolinger had taken out a box and there was a white little fellow within the box. The reason it was able to break through the shackles of its bloodline was because of that little fellow. Is that little fellow going to appear again? Xiao Linger gazed at Li Xinghe who stood nearby. Li Xinghe chuckled, call quickly. I hope it's not too weak. Confidence. As one of the top swordsmen in this world, he was naturally confident. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Xiao Linger opened the box. A ray of black light suddenly drifted out. In midair, the black light dispersed and a little girl appeared in front of everyone. The little girl wasn't tall and her hair was tied up in a ponytail. She wore a snow-white shirt and her arms were exposed. She wore a pair of blue pants and there were a few holes at the knees. On her feet she wore a pair of cloth shoes that were as white as snow. Something worthy of mentioning was that the little girl had a pair of horns on her head and a long tail behind her. The little girl had both her hands in her pockets, and there was a candied hawthorn in her mouth. Her right foot tapped lightly in a very rhythmic manner and she was even humming an unknown tune. P.S. Thank you to all the friends who tipped and voted yesterday. Thank you for your support. Chapter 708. A little girl? Everyone was looking at the little girl. They hadn't expected that Zhou Xian would actually call a little girl out. The little girl was completely devoid of aura and she seemed like an ordinary person. However, the Emperor Hound by Zhou Xian's side had an unprecedentedly solemn expression on its face. Tremble. Its body was trembling. Zhou Xian gazed at the Emperor Hound while feeling extremely shocked in his heart. This little girl actually made the Emperor Hound afraid? He knew about the Emperor Hound. It was an extraordinary ferocious beast, and coupled with the fact that it had broken through the shackles of its bloodline, it could be said to be at the top amongst ferocious beasts. However, it was actually afraid of the little girl at this moment. Based on her outward appearance, it was very likely that she was a demon beast. In other words, it was very likely that she was a ferocious beast as well. So, exactly what sort of demon beast could make even the Emperor Hound fear her? Zhou Xian gazed at the little girl in the distance. The little girl's eyes opened slowly, and her pupils were pitch black while she seemed quite carefree. Li Xinghe's eyes were filled with a solemn expression as he gazed at the little girl. The little girl was completely devoid of aura and she seemed like an ordinary person. That was exactly why she was even more terrifying. Li Xinghe held his sword tightly and no one knew what he was thinking. The little girl glanced at the surroundings and then she said softly, "Is this the sword sect?" The sword sect? Zhou Xian was slightly stunned, but it didn't take long for him to come to an understanding. It was probably the same box that he'd found in the sword sect. Meanwhile, the little girl turned around to gaze at Xiao Linger, and Xiao Linger hurriedly withdrew a candied fruit and passed it to the little girl. The little girl received it in a very natural manner, and then she gazed at Xiao Linger. "You called me out?" Xiao Linger hurriedly nodded. The little girl sized up the little girl and said, "Do you want to fight?" Xiao Linger immediately pointed at Li Xinghe who stood nearby. The little girl turned around to look at Li Xinghe and then she sized him up. "So weak? So weak?" Everyone here was dumbstruck. "So weak? Is there something wrong with this little girl's head?" Li Xinghe looked at the little girl. "You think I'm weak?" The little girl thought for a moment and said, "Let me correct you. You're not weak, you're very weak." Everyone, Li Xinghe suddenly laughed. "After so many years, this is the first time someone has called me weak. Furthermore, it's just a clone." Right at this moment, the little girl suddenly appeared before Li Xinghe. Li Xinghe's pupils suddenly constricted. He suddenly drew his sword and stabbed. Buzz! A sword cry resounded and a ray of sword light slashed toward the little girl. Under everyone's gaze, the little girl suddenly punched out. It was a simple punch. Boom! Everyone watched as Li Xinghe's ray of light instantly vanished without a trace. At the same time, Li Xinghe's figure appeared over 3 kilometers away, and the space before the little girl's eyes was pitch black. At this moment, everyone in the surroundings was petrified. Zhou Xian's eyelids twitched and his heart raced. Where did this monster come from? In the distance, Li Xinghe was only left with his spirit. Furthermore, his spirit was rapidly fading away. Li Xinghe's gaze was slightly dazed. "This?" The little girl licked her sugar-coated haws and spoke emotionlessly. "Can't you just admit that you're weak? Why do you have to go against me?" Li Xinghe gazed at the little girl. "Who exactly are you?" Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors. Zhou Xian lacks talent and virtue. From this moment onward, Zhou Xian is removed from the position of prince and will be succeeded by Yi Lang. It was an old man in black robes who spoke these words. A young man stood not too far away from the old man, and he had a faint smile on the corners of his mouth. It was Yilang. On the other hand, the elders of the Yi clan stood on both sides. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yiling and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan was going to remove Yi Xian from his position, she had rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yiling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yiling bowed slightly to everyone in the ancestral hall and spoke timidly. Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Grand Elder looked coldly at Yiling. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yiling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Grand Elder suddenly raged. Whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time the new prince Yilang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Grand Elder replied coldly, then do it 30 times. Very quickly 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he is still fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yilang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yilang inherits the title of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap was heard. Yiling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yilang sized up the guard and asked with a smile, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yilang nodded, you are very good. After I become the prince I will need 10 guards. From now on you will be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince. Yilang nodded slightly. Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not hold back. Understood? Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yilang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt dizzy and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yilang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's entire face was a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, who was crying for help. He walked up to Yiling. Seeing Yiling's state, Yi Xian felt like his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the elders of the Yi clan. "Why?" At this time a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and asked timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. Once again she bowed to the elders. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the clan and his life is uncertain. But now the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair." "Impudent." The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder replied coldly, "Then flog 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master, Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and Yi Ling's right cheek instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You are very good. After I become the prince I will need 10 guards. From now on you will be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. "I will go through fire and water for the prince and I will do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe and the robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes and his face was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt his head spin and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there and rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Chapter 709. At this moment Yi Xian and the Emperor Hound suddenly realized how important this candied hall was. Very important. Xiaolinge. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian, the Emperor Hound, and Yanjia suddenly looked at Xiaolinge. This little fellow must not be offended. They could not afford to offend her. Xiaolinge suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "I still have a box." With that, a box suddenly appeared in front of her. A box. At the side, the Emperor Hound's mouth twitched. Yi Xian walked in front of Xiaolinge and said seriously, "This box cannot be used carelessly, understand?" Xiaolinge nodded. "Use it when it's dangerous." Yi Xian gently rubbed Xiaolinge's little head. "Yes, use it when it's dangerous." Xiaolinge slightly lowered her head. "I only have one box." "Only one box." Yi Xian smiled. "You can't bear to use it?" Xiaolinge looked at Yi Xian. "Will we be able to see her in the future?" Yi Xian asked. "The little fellow who gave you the box?" Xiaolinge nodded. Yi Xian smiled. "We will definitely see her." Xiaolinge grinned. "Good." With that she carried the box back into the prison pagoda. Yi Xian pondered for a moment, then looked at the Emperor Hound. The Emperor Hound said solemnly, "I want to go into seclusion." Yi Xian's mouth twitched. "Emperor Hound, how long will you be in seclusion this time?" The Emperor Hound shook its head. "I don't know." Yi Xian hesitated, then said, "Can you hurry up? I'm in a bit of danger now." The Emperor Hound glanced at Yi Xian. "When are you not in danger?" Yi Xian was speechless. After the Emperor Dog returned to the prison pagoda, Yi Xian walked in front of Yanjia. He looked at Yi Ling, who was in Yanjia's arms, with an extremely gloomy expression. Yanga looked at Yi Xian. "Let's go back first." Yi Xian fell silent for a moment and then he nodded. He carried Yi Ling in his arms and vanished with Yanjia. His sister was the most important. After Yi Xian and the others left, the scene returned to calm. In the dark, Xianyuanqi looked in the direction they left and said softly, "Martial Master, do you recognize the little girl just now?" Beside her, Xianyuanwu shook his head. "I've never seen him before." Xianyuanqi remained silent for a long time before she said, "Exactly how many backers does he have?" "A backer." Xianyuanwu fell silent. Just now that little girl had killed Li Xinghe, who was already at the Ascended Seal realm, with a single punch. Who was Li Xinghe? He was from the same generation as Xianyuanwu, and Li Xinghe's ranking on the sovereign rankings all those years ago was above Xianyuanwu. However, Li Xinghe wasn't just at the Ascended Seal realm, he was also an extraordinary swordsman. His combat strength could absolutely be ranked in the top 5 amongst Ascended Seal realm experts. However, such an extraordinary expert had been instantly killed by a single punch from that little girl. It was an instant kill. He didn't even have the ability to fight back. First it was the woman in a plain dress and now it was that strange little girl. If the founding ancestor of the Immortal Sword sect was included, then it meant that Yi Xian had 3 extraordinary experts backing him. Each of them was more heaven-defying than the last. The problem was, did Yi Xian have any other backers besides the 3 of them? Xianyuanwu fell silent for a very long time. In the end he said softly, "Little girl, hide yourself for now." Xianyuanqi gazed at Xianyuanwu and the latter said in a low voice, "That person is a vengeful person. He might not let you off and he might not even let my Xianyuan family off." Xianyuanqi fell silent. Xianyuanwu said softly, "I'll go see the patriarch." Xianyuanqi suddenly said, "He'll definitely take revenge. Not just us but the sword martial sect as well." Xianyuanwu looked at Xianyuanqi. Xianyuanqi said in a low voice, "We can't let him take revenge on us first." Xianyuanwu shook his head. "He probably hates my Xianyuan family the most." Xianyuanqi said, "No, he probably hates the person who's manipulating everything in the dark the most." Manipulating everything in the dark. Xianyuan Wu narrowed his eyes with killing intent. Not only did this person set up my Xianyuan family, but he also set up the sword martial sect. Who exactly is it? Xianyuan Qi said in a low voice. I've already asked Skynet to investigate. I believe we'll have news soon. Skynet. Xianyuan Wu nodded. We must find out as soon as possible. Xianyuan Qi's expression was gloomy. I also want to know who's behind all of this. News of what Yi Xian had done in the sword martial sect soon spread throughout the Black Origin Great World. Yi Xian. Almost everyone in the Black Origin Great World knew the name Yi Xian. He had many backers. That was everyone's impression of Yi Xian. Not only did he have many backers, but his backers were also very powerful. Now, everyone was very curious about Yi Xian's background. Why did Yi Xian have so many backers? Why? Countless forces were curious. In fact, even the people of the northern region were curious, let alone the other forces. And Lanxiu and the others were very familiar with Yi Xian, but they did not know why Yi Xian had so many backers. For example, they could not understand why the ancestral master of the Immortal Sword sect would help Yi Xian. Of course, that was not the main point. The main point was that the Xianyuan family had been severely damaged, the sword martial sect's ancestral master had fallen, and the Immortal Sword sect master had become Yi Xian, Northern Region, Prison Tower. Yi Xian looked at Yi Ling in front of him quietly. At this moment, pure spiritual energy was exuding from Yi Ling's body. About 2 hours later, Yi Ling slowly opened his eyes. The moment he saw Yi Xian, Yi Ling smiled. Yi Xian also smiled. But as he smiled, he began to cry. His tears flowed uncontrollably. No one knew what Yi Ling meant to Yi Xian. Everything. His little sister was his everything. When he was very, very young, when his mother had just left, that was the most difficult time for him. If it was not for his little sister, he would not have been able to persevere. Because that time was really too bitter. But whenever he saw his little sister, he would tell himself that he could not die. If he died, his little sister would have no one to rely on. He did not dare to imagine what would happen to his little sister if he died. At that time, his little sister was his belief. For his little sister, no matter how bitter, tiring, or difficult it was, he would persist on living. Because he was alive, his little sister could live. He never dared to think about what would happen if he lost his little sister. At the side, Yanjia looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. This was the first time she had seen Yi Xian cry. It was hard to imagine that a person like Yi Xian would cry. Because in her impression, Yi Xian was someone who was very decisive in killing, and could even be said to be somewhat cruel. This kind of person usually did not care much about feelings, or rather had no feelings at all. But Yi Xian cared so much about his little sister. Even more than his own life. She did not doubt that Yi Xian would really die for Yi Ling. For Yi Ling, he could really do anything, including die. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly said, "Brother, did I drag you down again?" Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. "It's not that you dragged me down, it's that I couldn't protect you." Yi Ling looked at Yi Xian. "If it wasn't for me, brother, Yi Xian suddenly said, "without you, life is meaningless to me." Yi Ling looked at Yi Xian and tears flowed from her eyes. Yi Xian gently wiped the tears off Yi Ling's face. "We have to live well. You bully others, but if anyone dares to bully us, brother will make them die a horrible death. Rest well, brother has something to do." After saying this, he got up and left the prison pagoda. Within the pagoda, Yi Ling was silent and no one knew what she was thinking. Yanjia suddenly said, "His enemies will become stronger and stronger." Yi Ling nodded, "I know." As she said this, she looked at Yanjia. "I can still become stronger, right?" Yanjia smiled, "Of course. Are you interested in Dao Law?" Yi Ling looked at Yanjia and Yanjia smiled. "One ice and one fire, it should be fun." In the hall, Yi Xian sat calmly and no one could tell that he was angry. In front of him were Jiang Jiao and Xian. Yi Xian said, "Investigate who is behind this." Xian said, "I just received a secret report." Yi Xian looked at Xian and she said, "There are 3 names in the report. The first is Dao sect, the second is Bound of Universe, and the third is Wu clan." Yi Xian was silent. Xian continued, "I do not know who sent this secret memorial, but at the moment the only ones who have the ability to do so and the motive to do so are these 3 families." Yi Xian was silent. Xian hesitated and then said, "The waters of Bound of Universe are very deep. No matter what your majesty wants to do, you must be very careful. Of course, she knew Yi Xian would not let it go so easily. If the other party had only attacked Yi Xian might have tolerated it for a while. However, if they had attacked Yi Ling, then they would not stop until one of them died. It should be said that whether it was Sword Martial Sect or Xianyuan clan, Yi Xian would definitely not let them go. And now it was a matter of time. Yi Xian nodded. I understand, you can leave first. Xian nodded and then left. Jiangju looked at Yi Xian. Don't be too impulsive. Yi Xian nodded. I won't do anything rash. One can only take revenge if he is alive. Jiangju nodded. It's good that you understand. Saying this, she hesitated and then said, I'm sorry, I can't help you too much. Yi Xian looked at Jiangjiu. Without you and Xian, I wouldn't be able to manage the northern region. You two are my good wives. Good wives. Jiangjiu rolled his eyes at Yi Xian. Are you taking advantage of me? Yi Xian said softly. Actually, I'm a little afraid that I'll implicate you too. Jiangjiu shook her head. Without you, everyone in the chaotic universe would be dead. Remember, you don't owe us and you don't owe anyone. Yi Xian was silent. Jiangjiu said, Don't let yourself live too hard. Saying this, she glanced at Yi Xian. Rest well, Xian'er, and I will go investigate and see if we can find the person behind this. Saying this, she turned and left. In the hall, Yi Xian was silent for a long time. Finally, he opened his palm and within it was a drop of blood essence. That mysterious little girl's blood essence. A moment later, Yi Xian directly swallowed that drop of blood essence. In an instant, Yi Xian's entire body began to burn. P.S. Ticket. Do you have it? You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.